Good afternoon. It is 5:10 on September 2nd, 2026, and this DC State Board of Education, the working session is now called to order. The working session is being streamed live on State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to view. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Director Butler, please call the roll.
Nathan Edinburgh.
Here.
Serena Lynn,
Here.
Mark Laus Rosario,
Present.
Alexander Ting,
Here.
Brandon Best,
Present.
Alistair Chang,
Present.
Dr. T. Michelle Colson, present, Dr. Robert Henderson,
Present.
Dr. Joy Johnson Law, Ebony Rose Thompson, Ben Williams,
Present.
Eric Boulay, Dr. Jacques Patterson.
Present.
Mr. President, you have.
Thank you so much, Director. I will now share my leadership report, and I always apologize, but I'm crazy busy, and it's now in your emails. I did send it out to you. It is quite lengthy, so I'm not gonna go blow for blow. We met in the month of August during the time that we were kind of running a little bit down. Some people were out of recess. We still met with everybody else. We met with Deputy Mayor Paul Kine, and we met with our superintendent, not once, but twice. And we had the opportunity to engage our interim chancellor, Dr. Jackson. What you will see, and I'll go through kind of quickly, but you can read, and if you have any questions for me, please do not hesitate to ask me or ask me to stop during the process. We met with our deputy mayor on August 12th. The agenda items that we discussed was the school safety office, attendance safety summit, and opportunity for collaboration, NASB High School Transformation State Network, and screen time and AI. All of these subjects, so to speak, we kind of talked about. We kind of were giving him an update. I did not attend that meeting because I was out at that particular time. So that was Vice President Clay who kind of chaired that. Okay, at that particular time. But there are notes in there as far as what was discussed. Okay. Then we met with our state superintendent. We met with our state superintendent before we actually met with our deputy mayor. We met with you on the 5th. And then we followed that up again on the 28th. Okay. Of course, the items which we'll go into depth a little bit more so later is the high school graduation requirements, AI leadership education summit, and the NASB High School Transformation State Network with them as well. There are copious notes that are in the in my email so that you can see blow for blow what we discussed. And then we also had the opportunity to speak with interim chancellor Dr. Jackson on August 11th, which was a great meeting because she's our interim person. We had never had a meeting. It was a lot of introduction. We did brief her on our strategic plan in depth. We talked about some issues that were brought up by members, specifically around leave that had been requested, and we're working through that particular aspect. We talked about student voice, since we now have our board members that are here right now, and committee annual reports. But again, notes are in the email that I sent you guys. What I will say at this particular point, if you have any questions, please ask them. In short, if you can, for the simple fact that we probably have some good stuff that we're going to delve into, and I want to make as much time for that, resolve as many issues that I can later. But go right ahead if you should have any questions. Going once. Going twice. Well, I thank you guys for your attention to the leadership report. And again, you can still reach out to me if you should read them more so and have a question, please not hesitate to contact me directly. Okay. All right. With that being completed, I will now turn to my capable director and just your turn now. Sir, report.
Good afternoon, state board members. August was an exceptionally productive month for the SBOE team. We completed the in-person orientation and swearing in for all 4 of our new student representatives, attended 6 back-to-school events across the district, finalized the recruitment and selection of our fall policy and communication fellows. Earlier this week, I completed the agency's deposition for the district's lawsuit against TikTok, and we are awaiting follow-up on the Apple antitrust subpoena for prime time. On the administrative side, the agency has finalized its realignment proposal for submission to ECHR, as well as our first draft of the agency's standard operating procedures. We will present this to the admin committee in September. As we close out 2026, we are conducting a final recruitment push for our student advisory committee. Really want to meet our goal of at least 1 high school student for every DC high school. Reflecting over the last 12 months of the fiscal year, I want to express my appreciation for the dedication, excellence, and discipline of the entire SBOE staff. This year, we hosted our largest ever student advisory committee to date with 150 students, launched a new digital P-card purchasing system across the agency, co-hosted the Civic Leadership Summit with the Maker Challenge, increased readership and engagement of our agency blog Slate, presented at the National Association of State Boards of Education Conference with our student members, supported the board members in developing and passing its strategic priorities, collaborated with the executive office of the mayor to produce the agency's first ever performance plan, and secured funding for TGS to upgrade the technology in old council chambers. All of this occurred while our team was overseeing a full renovation of our offices and operating for a swing space for 7 months. Every accomplishment of this fiscal year was a team effort and made possible by the talent and rigor of each staff member brings to the agency. So I am grateful that I get to work alongside such amazing professionals and that we continue to make the agency everything in the book. Looking ahead to FY27, the state board staff is drafting our spending plan, preparing for a new board member orientation, finalizing the site map for a redesigned SBOE website, redefining edits to the board's equity framework for state resolutions, and drafting the agency's transition memo for the incoming administration, and brainstorming ways to commemorate 20 years of the DC State Board next summer. So as you can see, we are not just thinking about now, we are planning well into next year. But last but not least, join me in wishing Andrew Root the happiest of birthdays on our team. Happy birthday, Andrew. That concludes my report. Are there any questions?
All right, I don't see any questions for our director, so thank you again, director, especially for all the work you guys have done over the summer, doing renovation, doing all type of changes, working on things like our sound system and being able to do type of meetings that we would like to have, where we have virtual, we're still working on that, we're hoping to get soon, which has been a labor in itself, but our capable staff has been working that and hosting TS accountable in every way. So I appreciate the work of the team and of you, director. So thank you so much. I will now be turning to our state superintendent, Dr. Mitchell. I thank you for bringing along the chief staff, Miller, and along with Andrew, who always comes through. And it is now your time. Thank you.
And Dr. Jones.
And Dr. Jones, I'm so sorry, sitting right there, looking right across from me, and I'm looking directly at you. So I apologize, Dr. Jones, looking right at you. So
No
thank you.
worries. So, good evening, everyone. I am so very grateful for the opportunity to come and talk to you about the state graduation requirements proposal that we put forth. This has really been a labor of love. We've been engaged in this work for 3 years now. And I believe that the work that we have done is really good. The things that we have agreed on are very important and they'll have very positive impacts for all of the students in the city. And I just want to remind you again of those things that we have already agreed on. They include the post-secondary planning and the post-secondary plan that will have 4 touch points for each student. They include the endorsements that we'll be able to add to diplomas. They include the slight changes to the core subject matters, and particularly the development of integrated math as one of the choices. They include a financial literacy course. They include a change in the number of hours of community service and a change in the definition of community service. So all these are big things that we have agreed upon. We recognize that there is one remaining, that being the world language and whether or not LEAs get to opt in to actually giving credit to students for an exam. And we even agree on the premise that students who can pass the exam should get that credit. The point of disagreement is around jurisdiction and whether or not we can actually enforce or mandate that LEAs opt into that. So we have provided a letter that I hope answered the questions that the state board sent to us. Our plan for this evening is to just do a very brief PowerPoint highlighting some of the issues from that letter, and then to answer any questions that you may have. I want to emphasize again that this process, in my mind, is democracy with a small d, and it's what we need to do. Negotiation and collaboration and compromise is incredibly important. We feel that we have compromised quite a bit in this process. You know, we came in with different ideas about the social studies, the number of credits for social studies, based on the feedback that we got. We backed down from that. We talked about the capstone experience. We wanted to make that something that all LEAs did. Based on your input, we said that, okay, we would take that off the table. We talked about the practical studies diploma, and we took that off the table. We also talked about a career education course that would enable kids to learn more about everything from resumes to digital literacy. That didn't go well. We took that off the table. So we've done a great deal of compromise in coming to this proposal that we have identified about 8 or 9 areas that we have all agreed upon. So I hope that we would keep that in mind, that in this negotiation, you don't get everything that you want, but you compromise and you come to understand that the whole is much bigger than the individual pieces. And with that, I'll just give you a really brief PowerPoint on the letter that we sent you that we hope answers the questions that you had. This looks like a lot, but I promise you it's just a PowerPoint. We'll do a little bit of historical background. We'll talk about why we believe that the waiver is a necessary piece when we think about competency-based education writ large. We will talk about what the waiver process is, talk about the agency roles, next steps, and then again, I'll open it up to questions. Next slide, please. So the waiver itself came about because in 2015, the state board convened a body that was inclusive of representatives and stakeholders from across the education landscape. It included LEAs and teachers and state board members and representatives from the city council, the DME, a real group of individuals that represented the entire education stakeholder body. Out of that task force came this notion that we would establish a waiver process so that schools could apply to LEAs and LEAs could then make decisions in the case of the charters with the charter school board about whether or not an LEA would be able to grant competency-based credit. That came out of months of work with everybody in the education landscape thinking about this notion of competency-based. So with the state board's approval, OSSE then promulgated rules codifying the flexibility, the credit flexibility, and implementing this waiver, the waiver. And again, everybody was in agreement that that would be the case. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the waiver was that, let me say that our system is based on Carnegie units. A Carnegie unit is 120 hours of instruction. Out of a waiver, that 120 hours of instruction is the law. So a waiver is necessary in order for the LEAs to use a different mechanism, use a different way of teaching to ensure that students are meeting the graduation requirements. So wanted to say that. I think we can move to the next line. So in terms of the actual words, a school that seeks a waiver from the Carnegie unit requirement to award competency-based units shall submit an application to either DCPS or the Public Charter School Board. And if the charter is a part of an LEA, and all of our charters are, the application must be submitted to PCSB through the LEA. So OSSI was charged with establishing the requirements for the waiver application and the format of the application, which we did. And then PCSB and the DCPS are the two bodies that make the decisions about whether or not schools get to use the waiver and grant competency-based credit. Absent a change from the framework that I just laid out, the Carnegie unit requirement is what remains the law of the land. So next, the process and process questions. One of the questions that you posed in your letter to us was about the timeline for waiver approval. And that is something that we thought could best be answered by the authorizing bodies, those individuals that make the waiver decision. You also asked whether it's possible for DCPS or PCSB to issue a blanket waiver. As I laid out, individual schools right now in the law and in the regulations have to apply for a waiver. Given the importance of evaluating the waiver, and in response to the equivalency of 120 hours, we think that it should remain a decision made with individual schools. And it's also important to note that we've not had any indication that this process isn't working. So there is that. And then next, go to the agency rules. So we have a jurisdictional concern with what we think that you would like us to do. I don't believe that it is within OSSI's jurisdiction to mandate that LEAs grant credit for students who take an exam in lieu of taking coursework to get credit for the 2 units of graduate that are required for graduation. I strongly believe that that is an LEA function. And that being the case, we are more than willing to identify the assessment to set the rate at which a student passes the assessment. But I cannot put before the board something that I fundamentally do not believe is within our jurisdictional authority. I think that the role of the state board and OSSI when it comes to graduation requirements is to set the requirement. And that is 2 units, 2 Carnegie units. I think that when we talk about how a student earns those 2 Carnegie units, I honestly believe that that is an LEA function. And we've laid out in the letter that we sent to you all of the regulations and code that we believe supports this. So again, the proposal that we have put before you is inclusive of all of the things that I talked about in the beginning that will be good for the majority of the students that are moving through and graduating in DC public schools, including the charters. The graduation and post-secondary plan, the endorsement options, the community engagement change, the integrated math, the physical education and health education separation, the notion of financial literacy, and the lessening of elective credits. We have compromised quite a bit in coming to this proposal, and we would ask that you would do the same. In terms of timeline and next steps, you are scheduled to vote on this on September 16th. We have already said that if it is an administrative burden that you worry about in terms of the waiver process, we can totally simplify that process for LEAs. We also recommend that we that the state board establish a CTE a competency-based education task force. Because I believe that the issues here could be much larger than just world language. There are a lot of additional competency-based credit areas that deserve to be explored. 2015 is over 10 years. It's time for us to take a look at it again. And so I would encourage us to think about whether or not we want to form a task force and take on competency-based education in a real way. We've got hundreds of courses in our schools now that are using competency-based education. We've got ideas floating around about whether or not a student who plays varsity sports should have physical education credit. That is as valid as anything else. And so why would we, focus solely on world language and not think about something that could be beneficial to many more students? So I would just encourage us to continue in the spirit that we started with, and that is one of truly keeping what's most important in mind, and that is the graduation requirements should be designed with a North Star, and that is to help as many of our students as possible earn a diploma and have post-secondary success. And with that, we will open up the floor to any questions that you may have about the letter that we shared with you.
I see hands raised by our members, but I know that our students are here too, so I'm going to give them an opportunity if they're students first to ask their questions, and then if not, I'm going to go to our members. I don't see our students at this particular time. I'm gonna go first with Mr. Henderson, one of the task force co-chairs.
First, thank you. Thank you for all your work over 3 years. Thank you for the compromises you've made. I also, when we're talking about this in a even more public way, I would also like to thank you for the proposals that we didn't ultimately go for, because I believe that the intent of all of them was to do better by our students, even if we didn't ultimately agree on them. I have a couple questions still. One, I think the next step of this process is that we are revising those DCMRs, right? So that those are like in play, is my understanding. So if we do want to change them, that's what we're doing. And I have a question about what is the substantive difference between requiring every LEA to do a capstone, which we ultimately didn't do, versus to offer these competency-based credits? Is it because we didn't attach that capstone to a credit bearing? Okay, I still find I guess ultimately I don't agree with I want the state education agency to be able to more freely do statewide policies. I understand that's not your interpretation of your authority. The other thing that is not making sense to me is with PCSB kind of in the middle there, not an LEA, but sort of this in between. I mean, they're neither a state education agency nor a local education agency, and how they fit in. And related to that, I think about the question of like, what is the problem with the system now? I think that, and this is something to verify with them, but I think that they believe that if charters want to do a waiver, they need to amend their charter. And that's a months-long, public process. And so if that is the case, I think that would be a more substantial hurdle. So I guess I need a little more clarity on the PCSB's role in it, because they're not an LEA, and like why it's okay for them to have the authority rather than at an LEA level.
Sure. So first, I will say, exercising state authority is very important to me, and we are doing that within the bounds of the law. In the presentation of the graduation requirements that I have spoken about, that is all that we are doing, is exercising our, the authority that is given to us in the law. So, we have a disagreement around jurisdiction for how the LEAs implement something. But the fact that we have the authority to say what the requirement is not in dispute. And we have said that, 2 credits for world language. How that happens is implementation, and I think it's clear that that implementation piece is left to the LEAs. Reasonable people can disagree though, for sure. In terms of the public charter school board, the waiver process has been happening for the past 10 years. LEAs have submitted. I don't know whether or not the charter changes or that it is a month-long process. Again, I've not heard anything, but this for me emphasizes the importance of bringing everybody to the table to talk about it. Because if DCBS and the charter school board as the authorizers said that, yeah, this is a good idea and we want to do it, I would not stand in the way. I just don't think that this is the way, the last minute, a proposal that we didn't even include after the task force. It just doesn't seem like a thoughtful way to make this change.
Was that it, sir?
Yes.
Representative Dulé, and then I'll come to you, Representative Bennett.
Well, Dr. Mitchell, I want to thank you and your team for everything that you've done, obviously, on this and your continued partnership on it. I apologize I couldn't have sent this out sooner, but I did just email everybody. I sat down right before this meeting and just took like a very drafted stab at just actually putting the changes we would need to do this in the DCMR. And I sent that to you and your team here, and then sent it to all the members. And I think for me, to piggyback on what Representative Henderson said, we're going to need to amend DCMR no matter what to implement the graduation requirements, because we have in DCMR in the same section 22, we have the credits and we have to amend those credits. So we will have to amend DCMR. So it's actually quite easy if we want to do what the task force recommended and simply amend DCMR with that recommendation, along with the changes you'll have to make anyway. So like amending DCMR has to happen anyway, and that's a really important point here. So I've sent changes that'll get this done. I mean, what we have is right now we have a requirement for 24 Carnegie units. I mean, it's just very simple to amend DCMR to say that, notwithstanding that 2 of those may be waived for competency-based credits for world language. I mean, that I've written the language there. I mean, you could draft it, with slight differences, but it's already done. And then down below, all you have to then do is set the parameters. So you set the tests that qualify for that credit. You set the the scores that you have to achieve on those tests. And again, it's done. I'd like to emphasize just a couple quick points here, and I'll try to be brief because I know other people have questions. I think the task force already looked at this issue of competency-based credits. I think they looked at it for quite a while as part of the graduation requirements. I proposed the phys ed. I was one of the people, maybe others too, on the phys ed, because I was trying to get that half credit back. Others talked about math. I heard math mentioned, but I think we really struck the right balance and got this right with the task force, which is solely focusing on this unique area that you can really test. So I don't really think we need to do another task force on this, because that work was already done by the high school graduation requirements task force. And frankly, I like the current process for pilot programs. I don't think the current process for pilot programs fits this, because this was recommended for all high school students as a path towards competency-based credit. Now, I have drafted, even though I agree with Representative Henderson, I do think you have the ability to establish this credit and require LEAs to take it. I know you disagree with that assessment, so I've drafted this in a way where I don't try to fight that fight. I just address this issue where we establish that the credit can be given without having to go through any waiver process whatsoever. And that streamlines the administrative burdens and eliminates them altogether. So we don't need to go through a pilot program waiver process. The credit's available. All an LEA has to do is decide to take it, and they don't have to do waivers anymore for this. For other competency-based credit pilots, they still have to do it, because I think everybody at the board is concerned about an overuse or an unregulated proliferation of competency-based credit. So I don't do anything other than just suggest this, but this is language that solves it. I would have loved to have brought printed copies, but it's now available for everybody to look at. But I would like to get this done because I think a lot of work has gone into it. I don't think the proposal that Ossie put forth in the letter moves it forward at all. It just goes through the old process. I mean, it doesn't change anything really. And I think we can get this done right now and really make a difference for our students on this issue. And we just look forward to continuing to work with you on this.
Was there a response or other questions? Like, give you opportunity to respond. I know you're just seeing it and everything like that. I just kind of digested.
You haven't seen it yet.
I think,
Yeah, shouldn't happen.
okay. So Representative Thompson,
I feel most similarly to Representative Goulet, both in the and absolutely agree with Representative Henderson as far as the spirit of every proposal put forth, as well as the work that's been done. I think that without being redundant as far as Representative Goulet or Henderson's remarks, the thing I would add is I do actually very much value the Carnegie unit, just generally. I don't think that we should just hand out credits. I don't without serious consideration of what mastery looks like and all the things. And I think what makes this proposal unique to that and not necessarily the same as a pilot for all competency-based learning, regardless of if we decide there's something to revisit in the near future or not, is that it is specific and has an identified and recognized mechanism to award the credits. I don't look at this as if we do this, then we would do that for every single thing. I am essentially making the argument that if we view this as sufficient to meet the high school graduation requirements and we respect the mechanism in place, then I do not understand the value add of applying for a waiver because we're saying that consistently we respect this approach. We cannot say that for any and all approaches that might employ competency-based credit. And it was actually very helpful. Thank you for sharing the document from the 2015 task force because when I have felt like, okay, there must be something that I am either not understanding, overlooking, or failing to consider because I tend to assume that OSSE does things for a reason, just like the state board does things for a reason. And so it's helpful to read the rationales. And what I understood the rationale to be was really about making sure our students actually captured the learning. And I don't see that as different from what is being recommended by the task force. I'm really struggling to see, I guess, the value add for a waiver with respect to this particular thing. I see a value add for a waiver in general for competency-based, more broadly for competency-based education, but I'd see this as more of a carve out than a pilot. And so I do not have a law degree. I've not assessed the language Representative Goulet has put forward. But when again, going back to what you shared with us, if the rulemaking was based on the recommendation and approved by OSSE with the state board and OSSE previously, I do think I fail to understand why that is not a possible path at this point.
I appreciate everything that you just said, and totally understand the logic there. I can only say that the difference is that the task force was inclusive of the LEA. So, making decisions around an area where the LEAs have jurisdiction without being inclusive just does not feel like the right way to make a policy, decision. I mean, it could be that the LEAs are more than willing to do this, and that will be fine. But that's the only thing. I'm not saying yes or no, I agree or disagree. I'm just saying that, a process by which we talk to the people that are gonna do the implementing to understand their perspectives is a respectful thing to do.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think what I disagree with, like, I agree with that approach in general. I think the place where I disagree, is we actually did have LEAs at the table during the task force process, and this came out of the task force, and we did a lot of engagement with LEAs and including the public charter school board. And as I understand it, it is not that the LEAs are taking issue with this. And the task force did adopt it just as they adopted the other things. And so I would feel much more strongly if this was something that came after the task force process had concluded. And we have represented all of the other proposals from the task force as inclusive. And so I don't see this one as different from that. I can appreciate both the overall approach and desire for additional engagement. I can understand that. I always think policy isn't perfect, and we promised to pass on as many things as we could about implementation, because those go hand in hand to make it work for students. But I respect that as an overall approach, and I think as part of the larger task force recommendations, the recommendations in the process of themselves, with itself, was inclusive of LEAs, and I don't want to single this proposal out as being different from any of the others. Not that it was perfect, but that is my perspective.
Other questions? Representative, please.
Yeah, question. I also appreciate all the work and the context. I wanted to come back because I previously did not know about the 2015 State Board Task Force and the rationale. So the historical background's really helpful. One of the language from the task force at that time says that the purpose of the waiver is to describe the method for determining competency within the courses that are being evaluated and the level of performance or achievement that will constitute mastery for state standards to be reached. Because I also, similarly to Representative Thompson, like, also value the Carnegie Union. Do you feel like we've already done that? Do you feel like that where we've landed on the task force, we've already done that without the waiver?
I think it is absolutely possible I don't quite understand the question, because the waiver is I don't quite understand this question.
I guess, like, what I'm trying to get at is like the purpose of my understanding of the original intent, the waiver, was for the LEA to determine whether or not students have met the benchmarks and the proficiency level for that equivalency of the credit. And now we're kind of like specifying that that in a clearer way only with world languages. So I guess I'm wondering do you see the purpose of the waiver still being necessary with its original intent in 2015?
I would say yes, just because it is within the LEA's jurisdiction to determine the how.
Okay. Questions, Representative Henderson?
Yeah, I think to clarify, so I think, Dr. Mitchell, you're referring to like the language in the task force proposal still retained the LEA discretion. And I think that we have, after that time, realized that that wasn't quite what we wanted to ask for. We wanted to ask for a statewide universal, for the student regardless of LEA. And so I think we have been missing, because I think we need to acknowledge that that was the language of the task force. That was the task force language, and we have since then changed a little bit. But I do think it is kind of in the spirit of what was intended by the task force. And I would, I agree with you about how weighty the broader topic of competency-based, and agree, we want to protect Carnegie unit and what it has meant for so long. But I'm wondering if for this narrow cutout, as Representative Goulet said, if we were to check in with we've got the big LEA, and then we've got 60 odd more. And if they did give the feedback that they welcomed it, could we reconsider it? And also, I'm thinking of this, the language of cutout is helpful. I do research in housing, and there's this concept of a by right permitting. So like you have to apply for a permit for everything. But if you're within the strictures, the regulations, which in this case would be the approved exam, the approved score, that you have it by right, like you will get it will be granted as sort of like a proactive or a permissive regulation.
Before I go to Representative Goulet, Vice President Goulet, right, I believe as people with traffic here, it's time stamped on my at 429. No authority from the DC Charter Alliance also sent us an email speaking about where they are, so to speak, on this. This sent specifically to you, but it has all of us attached to it, stuff like that, to kind of give some definition of how they feel about this, as well as we bring them up and kind of put them in the context. So just letting you guys know there is an email there that kind of speaks to some of the things that we're talking about as we kind of include the PCSB. Representative Goulet.
Yeah, I'll make this quick. I just want to actually answer your question, Representative Williams, I think, which was a good one. It got me thinking about this, because like part of that waiver process that was set up back then was to make sure that if we were waiving the Carnegie unit, we were doing it with rigor. And I think what the state superintendent can do with this proposal is establish that rigor through finding only tests that really truly measure competency with foreign languages, and then assessing scores for competency or the seal by literacy that really demonstrate, the type of proficiency that it would only be obtained through meeting or achieving those Carnegie units. I mean, some of these involve heritage languages that youth have grown up speaking, and certainly they've had to put the hours in to be able to get that mastery. So for me on this, I think there's two different things we're trying to address. One is, can we waive this Carnegie unit issue without having to go through a waiver process? That's what I try to do through this amendment, which I now thank our staff for circulating around. I think we can easily do that because we have to amend DCMR anyway for this. So we might as well take care of that and eliminate the waiver process. I think the larger issue of whether or not we can require all the LEAs to take the credit. Yeah, I mean, I think that may be one we have to agree to disagree on. I mean, I'd like to think that within our system, if a student has earned a credit, whether it be through earning it at DCPS, earning it through a charter school, or earning it through this established competency-based credit, that every other school in good faith would take that credit. But if that's not the case, then I think that may be something to reevaluate in the future. But I just think we're really close on this. I just appreciate your continued partnership. And I think the point Representative Thompson made about trying to complete the work of the task force and all the work that the LEAs put into that, all the work that the community put into that, I think we can get this one across the finish line. By continuing to work together on it. And we may have some issues that we don't agree on, but we can set a process for this it is streamlined significantly. And they can really expand access to world languages for our students who are ELL or students who are fluent at home. So I just excited to keep working with you on this and then look forward to, voting at the earliest time. Hopefully with something that has this in there.
Thank you so much. Representative Colson.
To your point, one of the points referenced in the email by Mr. Jordan is the concern that if one school receives it and grants this credit and then transfers to another school, will that still apply? I agree with the sentiments of my colleagues, and I think I have a very simplified question, and I wish I had one that was more complex. It simply is, if we agree that this has been a labor of love, if we agree that the intent is for what's best for the children, and we agree that there definitely have been concessions in this 3-year process, all of us have already earned our degrees. What does it cost us? If this holds up and we can do this, what does it cost us to make these additional changes? Because it can make a huge difference for a student who's trying to graduate. And so that's my wondering. Not sure that we really have an answer, but I know that there's been back and forth, and I know that things have fallen to the side and we've made great strides over this 3 years. But for those of us who have the privilege of having those individual relationships with students, and we sit there at the table with them and they're trying to graduate, this can really make a difference between someone deciding to drop out because they're exhausted and they've come too far versus someone who's saying, yes, this right here can give me exactly what I need to make me cross over to the finish line of graduation. So I just want us to keep that in mind, that this is really not costing us anything if we are able to make the change. It's for the children. I see reservations. Go ahead, Mr. Andrew.
I was just thinking, I know Representative Henderson earlier asked if we could get everybody on board, all the major LEAs, all the major stakeholders, would we reconsider? I am curious, sort of reflecting that back, if we did do outreach to major LEAs, WTU, et cetera, and they weren't on board, would the state board wanna and table this conversation to have that larger conversation, or the members that are putting forward this idea now?
I mean, I can answer that. I mean, I would depend on, I guess, what they had to say. I mean, if they just came in and said, well, we don't support this at all, but if they had some reasons we haven't thought about. I mean, I think the task force did an extraordinary job including people. There was public comment on it. I mean, in all those groups you just mentioned had an opportunity to speak before the task force. Now, if they come in with something that the task force wasn't able to consider, or that we're not considering now, I mean, of course, we're always open to, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm always open to like something that I missed. But like, I think that process has been laid out in I don't want to say painstaking, but very thorough detail by the task force. And there was extraordinary public comment. The teachers union was involved, charter LEAs were involved, DCPS was involved. And, I would love to get us to the point that Representative Colson talked about, where if a student earns this, they can take it anywhere. They can be assured that whatever DCPS school they go to, whatever charter school they go to, that, the credit will be transferable. I just don't want to fight that fight with OSSI and then lose out on this waiver process. Because I think if we can get rid of this waiver process altogether, and this credit is just there by right in the DCMR, I think schools will take it at that point. I don't think there'll be any pushback. And and I could be wrong, but it'll eliminate one hurdle, and it's a pretty big hurdle. So that they don't have to do the pilot waiver program. It's just there and it's done.
Can I just, I don't understand what pilot waiver program everybody keeps talking about, because I haven't seen one or heard one, but I just want to clarify for Dr. Colson, your answer to your question. There is nothing stopping students from doing this now. This is already in place. Schools have applied for and received competency-based unit waivers for world languages. There's schools that are doing it now. So there's nothing that is, in terms of the question of harm to the students, schools can do this now. We have not heard this outcry from schools saying we can't do this, LEA saying we can't do this, CCS, PCSD. So we have the ability to do this now. think Dr. Mitchell is stating is that making choices like this without fully understanding the potential impact of it actually stands to potentially put us in, do the wrong thing, right? Like, this just goes in, a school decides they're gonna do it, they have it, it's in place, so they say they started it, they haven't figured out scheduling for the kid decides they're gonna wait till senior year to take it, they fail the test. Do you not graduate now? Do you go back and report? Like, there are just so many pieces of this that should be thought out before this is a move. I had the privilege of sitting on that 2015 task force. It was a long time ago. But one of the state board members then, state board member Laura Wilson Phelan, I believe she was Board 1, was an excellent facilitator, and she facilitated that task force, and the amount of just even researchers that were brought to the table to think about what this would mean, not only in terms of transferring within schools, what does this mean transferring outside of, there's a lot to unpack. And so that's just at the heart of the matter.
And I hear you and I respect that, and I'm gonna sit with that. I think when we sit at the table, we always have good intent and think that what we have put in place has trickled down and been implemented. And I just always think of what if the hurdle is someone who is not implementing what the policy says. And honestly, too often that does happen. And so as much as possible, I understand the limitations that we have, but I always want to lean into that in the conversations when we're making decisions. But thank you for that wonderful memory of being able to recall all of that. That's very helpful.
And you have a lot on your, I went back and looked at your site. A lot of that information is there. It's really, really well done.
I want to clarify about I just want to clarify about the pilot versus the carve out language. It's not that we are suggesting that there is an existing pilot.
What is that?
We are not suggesting that there is an existing pilot. I think when people say pilot, it's like, we do not want to think about this particular proposal as a pilot. We're not treating it as a larger, as a way to test if we should do this for other competency-based credits. We're not trying to open up revisiting, at least in this conversation, if what should be the larger waiver process for competency-based credits. That's not at all what we're suggesting. So we're saying we don't want to treat this like a pilot, not that there is an existing pilot. We are saying rather we should be treating this as a carve out because there's a specific prescription for how, if you do this, then the credits will be awarded. And so we're saying those are two different approaches.
Thank you, Representative Thompson. Representative Williams, I believe you have.
Yeah, I had a clarifying question because I think to kind of connect your response to Dr. Colson, like my concern would also be like who is applying for the student to be able to get the credit, right? And I feel like part of the distinction that we're talking about with requiring the waiver or not is like, can LEAs submit this waiver for students or do they need to? And I guess what I'm wondering is, if a student fulfills the requirements and for some reason the school does not submit the application, is there another recourse for students to be able to do so? And is it kind of automatic? Is it like I've met the benchmarks of what I need to do, therefore the application is sent? Or are there any other steps that I'm missing? Kind of like, does that make sense?
I mean, it's the difference between a waiver and none.
I mean, those questions are great questions.
Mhm.
That is why the folks who implement this thing, the folks who are in charge of authorizing this thing need to be at the table to specifically agree to that. Because all of those, how this works, that is what that's for. We don't essentially.
Right, and that's a,
So that
Yeah,
if
it's an
you were
LEA
to
function.
just take some time to talk to the LEAs, then I would be much more comfortable having the conversation. Don't understand why that component is not something that we want to do. I know that you had the task force. Glenn Starnes, who is now on staff with us, was a member of the task force. He doesn't remember detailed, extended conversations around this or the vote. And so I would just encourage us to talk to the LEAs and then figure out where they are. That it's not a new thing to develop a policy by talking to the people who have to implement. So I would encourage that as the next step here. Because again, I want the kids to get the credit too. Just a matter of making sure that everybody in the process is on board.
Representative, well, that's the last thing, and I think I confused people by using the word pilot. I mean, I was specifically referring to section 22037, which is the existing process for putting the waivers in, like on a case-by-case basis, maybe case-by-case is better than pilot, we'll say case-by-case. I mean, I think we wanted to establish through the graduation requirements, as for something citywide, not case-by-case. So to the extent the pilot word confuses it, I'm specifically speaking about a case-by-case, course-by-course waiver for each LEA through 2203.7. So that's what I was referencing there. And I just want to, I think we're actually really getting close on this, because I think you're saying that you believe, you being OSSI can look at the exams, figure out which exams measure competency and what scores show competency for 2 credits versus fluency. So that part we can do. So like the waiver process, I mean, I think we found a way to get rid of that without any issues. I think the only question then remains, will the LEAs take the credit? I mean, I think that can be resolved at any time, because we're not really trying to, at least what I put forward, mandate that they take it. I mean, I think hopefully they will. I mean, we could go back and say, hey, we take this, but we just got an email from the Charter School Alliance, which doesn't speak for individual LEAs, but does represent their collective kind of positions, we'll say, across the board. And they seem very supportive of trying to make sure that our students can take advantage of this. So I just like to keep working. I'm glad to reach out to individual LEAs. I think there's been a lot of that already. But I think we've got time between now and the vote on this to secure that, and then get back to OSSI and say, hey, LEAs are on board with this and they're excited about it.
And the LEA authorizing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I hear what you say, I agree with most of what you said, I do not agree with the first part that we are in agreement that a waiver is fine.
Maybe just one reminder that the resolution language doesn't actually include this particular bit, so the vote could still move forward as a reminder.
I appreciate that part, and Andrew, public, I appreciate it. Representative Thompson.
I have 2, possibly 3 separate points. Point number 1, we do know that the resolution language doesn't include this. And I think that's one that actually, for some people, that might be reassuring. And I think for others, it is not reassuring, because then it's like, what is the mechanism to ensure the conversation continues? And if there is a path to resolving it before that, and similar to actually what you said, which I can completely appreciate, like you would not put something before us that you do not believe in. I think we are similarly situated where because knowing, yes, the resolution does not include the language, I think members are also trying to vote on something that they believe in the spirit of, right? And so we know the process, and I think there are multiple ways to look at that vantage point. So that's the first part of it. Second, with regards to the student, I will tell you what profile of student I have in mind. as opposed to, just to be clearer, I am specifically thinking about students who are, it used to be ESL, now it's ELL, some people say MLL, multilingual learners, because oftentimes, not only are we looking at the fact that they bring in a different language as a barrier, we list that as like a challenged population, but oftentimes it's also their families who are not the ones who are able to navigate the system in the same way. And so my worry is if you do have a school who does not apply for the waiver, has not applied for the waiver, and that student is already, we think about how many classes they have to take and everything else, like, why would are we essentially saying that we're not creating a system that will advantage them and honor that as like something that is an asset instead of a difficulty? I'm not thinking about as much the student who goes and takes Japanese in their free time because they're trying to improve their college application, because I have no doubt that their family can get that seen in all the ways it needs to be seen to count toward whatever system they're trying to navigate. And so I do think what barriers we have in place or processes we have in place matter more so for some people than others. And that is actually, I guess, what I'm trying to reconcile. And then third, I do very much appreciate this conversation because I want to, again, coming from the place of, I don't think OSCE just makes arbitrary decisions, and maybe that's a projection because I don't make arbitrary decisions, right? I'm like, help me understand what are the reasons we cannot do this? And if we can understand like the problem, we can arrive at a solution that I think everyone feels is the best we can do at this moment in time. But I would not say that what was that? In August, we had a conversation in a way where, at least I would speak for myself, I could articulate this is the why we are making certain decisions. And so those are three separate things, but I hope that they are helpful.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge Representative Chang, who has raised his hand online. Representative Chang.
Thank you. I wanted to zoom out, but also happy to come back to this one after. I think of our roles as representatives, right, of your voice in education. So I think one of the things that has been on my mind that I want to have a chance to ask before we vote is on public engagement efforts. I think from multiple stakeholders, there have been, or many of us, there have been very concerted efforts to get public feedback. And to the OSCE team, I'm very curious to get your assessment on how well that was done.
When you ask that question, do you mean how well it was done by OSCE or how well it was done by the state board?
I mean, that's one of the interesting things, actually, right? I think overall, one of the things that I'm curious about is in your assessment of in aggregate, not who did what well or poorly, but just did we by the end get to the voices that we wanted to and learn the things that we needed to shape this?
Well, I believe that we did. We began at OSCE with multiple stakeholder meetings, speaking with parents across all 8 wards. I could go down the list of the folks that we spoke with, the surveys that we did, et cetera, et cetera. We had hundreds, if not thousands, of touch points to get to the graduate profile, as well as the proposal that we put before you. I would say that the overwhelming response that we got from our outreach was around many of the items that we have all agreed on. People were really excited about the financial literacy, really excited about the endorsement option, really excited about all of the things that we have agreed upon. The world language issue, I think we had two people that were very much engaged in that. I would not say that we had overwhelming support, either for or against this particular item. So we heard voices. We didn't hear, so yes, we
And-
heard many voices on it.
And we've spent a lot of today talking about that one, but I'm curious as we reflect on this very long process that we've taken on together, what are some other topics that came up that were, you know, that generated the most public feedback that was in contradiction or not immediately aligned from the start?
So one of the proposals was around reducing the number of credits for social studies. That one got a lot of attention, a lot of feedback on like, don't do that. One of the proposals was around financial literacy. Everybody universally loved that idea. One of the proposals was around reducing some of the science credits. Folks were very much in disagreement about that. Folks absolutely loved the endorsements. We heard a lot from students and school counselors about reducing the community service hours. That was a big one. Other big ones. Certainly, people were so happy to hear about, talk about, and endorse the the post-graduation plans and the touch points. As a matter of fact, you all took it from when we proposed 2 or 3, and you all said no, 4 touch points. Right. Everybody was really happy about that. People really believe that these plans will do some good in terms of guiding students through high school. So yeah, there was a lot of excitement around many of the proposals that we made. And as I indicated, there was also pushback on some of those proposals, which we decided to table.
And I think particularly for those that, unlike financial literacy, did not have sort of like you named, general support. You know, I think how did you and the team think through how to decide between the competing perspectives, right? That were named and sort through.
We had lots of meetings. We listened to all of the perspectives. We thought through our initial recommendations. We went back through the research that we did to come to those recommendations. We had a steering committee to kick the work off. We had special meetings with this body, particularly around the special education diploma, the practical studies diploma. We did national research, looked at what Virginia's doing and what Maryland's doing. And ultimately, we made decisions to either drop or maintain, compromise, just based on the whole amalgam of input that we received.
And I appreciate that, right? And I think I acknowledge the tremendous amount of effort to do public engagement, including from the co-chairs of our own efforts there, Ebony Rose and Robert. Thank you. I think the piece here that I'm also thinking about is, right, and as we reflect on what was done, just also curious to kind of hear a summary of the efforts that were made to bring in a diverse number of stakeholders. I know you touched on being in every ward, and how you thought through how to get as much feedback from a diverse set of voices as possible, and where that was where that was successful, where that was challenging. If there's anyone that you think, any group of people or type of stakeholder that you felt was particularly challenging to engage or still not misrepresented, but underrepresented by the end of all this.
And I know Dr. Jones and Dr. Mitchell had a lot of very targeted engagements and more than 40 engagement sessions. I will say when I did my engagement, I was thinking back to actually Representative Reed, back when she was on the board, she always pressed, she would say, you know, Ward 8 voices were underrepresented and the general public was underrepresented. We have a lot of people who tend to show up to these types of meetings over and over again. And so to get new voices, what I know a couple of years ago when we started this, as I went out on the street and just canvassing to hear from people's voices. That was at a DCPS.
I didn't know you do that. That's great.
Party event.
Yeah.
And I went to EdFest and did that. And the thing that stuck out to me in my memory was financial literacy over and over. It actually changed my mind. But be honest, I was not initially in favor, but when I heard every single person telling me that this is something that they wanted, I was like, okay, that's what the public wants. And I will say that the idea that, you know, that you have to apply for a waiver versus not applying for a waiver in order to accomplish the competency based for world languages did not come up when I was talking with the public.
And so for us to learn for the next big project like this that we take on, is there any takeaways for us on how to do public engagement different, better, similarly next time?
Well, I be like now Deputy Superintendent Darn with the OXI staff member. I was also in the task force, and I would say that the co-chairs did include many of the same processes that we stamped when we were doing our engagement, looking at best practices, looking at DC from a local lens, making sure that there was representation across the various constituency bases. So those components were there. And just to look back upon some of the questions that you asked about how we made sure that we had diverse representation within who we had our outreach with. Many of the representatives in this room, and thank you all for your presence at those meetings, when we had our engagement with the Education Council were in attendance, and we had multiple sessions with the representative, the ward councils, engaged, as the superintendent said, other state agencies for best practices. We conducted the 40+ sessions that Andrew mentioned. So this was a very comprehensive and holistic process that we undertook over the past 3.5 years. So thank you, Representative, for your questions and helping us refocus on the work that we did. But your colleagues did include many of those same principles on the task force.
And I will say, thank you. And I think that's part of what I'm acknowledging, right? Of this we're focusing on one point right now in this conversation so far, but there's been so many different efforts from different bodies to reach out to different people. And I think the WTU did their own public engagement process as well, right? And Representative Johnson Law also did more topical public engagement, and I think what I would flag there that is interesting to me as we consider this, and I think this is where why I'm getting at this, right? Because it will shape how I vote, is that it was a similar process as you named, for the one that OSSI did and the one that the SBOE did, and it led to some different conclusions, right? And so when I think about what does it mean to be, going back to my first point, a representative of the public voice in education for this, in many ways, I've been spending time looking back at what have the various public engagement efforts taught us, and how would that inform how I should vote. And so, and thank you for indulging me in this line of question, but I think if I may take that last point of, we did take on a similar process, would love your reflections on the differences that came up in the conclusions, and how to make sense of that.
I would say that the folks that are advocating for the world language universal credit were the same people that were in the task force and that were here. So I don't know that there's some sort of difference there. The question is whether or not we mandate it for all LEAs, or we keep it at the option of the LEAs. And I think that is a sort of wonky policy level piece that the general public probably didn't even engage in very much. So I don't know. I hear your question, but I'm not sure how to answer it, given that I don't believe that the general public is engaged in this level of detail around this issue.
Okay.
Were you good, sir?
Thank you.
And Representative Chang, our student, we have a student that has a question, so I definitely would like that. So Representative Lyles Rosario.
I just wanted to bring it back to the graduation requirements, and I may be like misinterpreting something like just a little bit. But I am like failing to understand like the difference between, you mentioned that you're separating like the competency and the fluency for the exams. I just wanted to know what was your description of competency, and how does that differ between fluency? And then it's like a two-part question. Like, is there an example of like an exam that you propose like to measure fluency, to measure competency, like the European system of like A through C mastery?
So what we are saying is that a student who is able to pass an exam that has 4 components: speaking, listening, reading, and writing a language at a certain level will receive credit for graduation. So there's no real difference between fluency. The goal is to ensure that a student has mastery of the language, and that has 4 components. And all 4 of those components would have to be assessed at a certain level in order for the credit to happen. So I don't have an example, except there is an exam that we have noted in our publications called STAMP. And that is one that measures all 4 of those components.
We have another student representative, Aaron Bird.
Yeah, thank you so much. In your presentation earlier about the waivers and what exactly you do to without, what exactly OSSI can do. And one of the things that was mentioned was reducing the administrative burden and streamlining the process. I'm curious what that looks like.
Sure. So currently, when an LEA puts forth a waiver, they are required to provide a lot of information about the actual instruction and coursework that will be a part of the competency-based course, as well as an evaluation. What we were proposing is that we could add a paragraph and a checkbox for LEAs that want to use competency-based credit for world languages, given, as Representative Boulay has said, that OSSI would identify the exam and the levels for deemed necessary to pass the test. That would streamline the process and negate the need for LEAs to go into great detail around what's in the course.
Thank you. I'm looking around and I tried to make base contact with a number of our members to make sure this will be probably the last question, and it will come from Vice President Clay.
And I just want to quickly respond, I think, to a point you raised, Mr. Gall. And the issue is this, is what are we voting on? And I think that's an important question, because we have a resolution which is just 2 pages, doesn't really include a lot of detail. But we have something else that's very important with it. We have that one pager that you put together. And what that one pager essentially is how we amend this right here, but in layman's terms. Because whenever we take a look at this, what we are voting on is amendments to all of these sections. So we're amending 2203.3 and then changing these courses in here. That's what we're voting on. And we're voting specifically how we change them. We're voting on changes to 2203.12, which is the community service requirements. We're changing that. So what we are voting on, it's not, like, I don't want to have this false distinction between like what we're voting on and the implementation. We are essentially voting on, in layman's terms, the changes to DCMR. And what I would like to see in that, we have three proposals before us. We have, where I was on the draft, which is that we should go through the case by case waiver process, which is in 2203.7. Then we have a middle ground proposal where we get rid of the waiver process, but we still don't try to require LEAs to take the credit, because you think that's outside our authority. That would be what I drafted and circulated. And then we have the third proposal, which is what the task force put out, which would be that we try to mandate this for all LEAs. And that's what I would still prefer. I would still prefer that if a student meets the standards you've set as state superintendent and achieves the credit, that all LEAs take that. I know we're gonna agree to disagree on that part, but I think what we could achieve, at least the middle ground that says, let's try to get this streamlined and get the bureaucracy out of here. If you set these standards, let's try to get this done without a waiver process, and maybe then all the LEAs can just get this done faster, and we can make sure our kids get this credit. So that would be my ask, at least to look at that.
We will look at
Okay.
it, absolutely, we will look at it.
All right, thank you, everyone, for
Yes.
the in-depth questions to really get to something that's gonna really serve our students, our families, because that's our ultimate goal. At the end of the day. And I want to say in the interim time, because as everyone here would like to vote on this as soon as possible, but with the date of coming up of the next public meeting, what I'll say is if we can have a little bit of back and forth to see if we can get to that after you guys have reviewed what the LA has proposed, we can get to the middle ground as he's just spoke of, that we can possibly have vote as possible. And get this done. I just really appreciate the work. We've been in this for 3 years and we appreciate that.
When you're finished.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that, sometimes policymaking is very difficult, it can be very contentious, but it's also very passionate because people feel very strong about their constituents and how they explain to their constituents what was passed and what they believe in. So I just want to appreciate you guys going back and forth with us at this particular time, and just indulging all those aspects that every single member is really passionate about every policy, not just this one, but every policy. And we just want to get it right for our constituents. Okay, so thank you so much. I believe this. Okay, so thank you so much for that. And with that, since it was very heavy, I'm going to give us a 5-minute break. If anyone needs to take care of anything really quickly. It is currently 6:33. If we could be back at 6:38, I would appreciate that. Thank you. It is now 6:40, and I'm gonna gavel us back in after our break. I'm glad to see during that time period that there were a lot of, smiles, laughs, and, just good interaction, and a in-depth conversation. As members know, the staff have embarked on the process to update and redesign our agency's website. I will now turn to our public information officer, Andrew Rowe, to share updates on this project.
Oh, well, there we go. Okay,
One second. Doing it wrong.
yeah, so. As you guys know, I think it's been a long time since our agency's website has been updated, revamped, made relevant, many, many things. And I think it's been one of the projects that I've been wanting to tackle the most since onboarding here 2 years ago. And earlier this year, Bernice and I had a conversation about been a little difficult sometimes getting it on track with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. But earlier this June, we finally kind of got a train laid on the track for that. And we talked about doing this as part of the upcoming 20th anniversary for the state board in 2027. And so over the past 2 months, we've kind of started some of the groundwork to get this project rolling, to hopefully unveil this sometime next spring, early summer, so spring, summer of next year. So kind of the big purpose that we're working with right now is just focusing on creating a website that makes it easier for constituents to find the information that they want. That the information is more accessible, that the content that they do confront on that site, that it's more accessible, and just more understandable in general, while working within the budgetary constraints that we know that we are going to have. So our vision for this, having a website that has clear storytelling about what it is this agency is and what it is that we do. And that we doing that through a more cogent information architecture. I'm sure that many of you coming to our website have encountered that there are orphan pages floating about. You can Google things about the state board and they'll show up in a Google search, but they won't show up on the actual website when you try to track them down in that manner. Other parts of the vision, just better integration of visual and multimedia elements. That a lot of our website is very textually dense. It's very difficult for many people to just very quickly scan and find information that they need in a way that they actually can use it. We have different people taking information in different ways. Easier navigation, what we just kind of discussed. More usable document management integrations and calendar functions. I think we had some respondents to a questionnaire that was sent out a few weeks ago. And I think universally, there is a little bit of dissatisfaction with Dropbox as an integration. So we.
A bit is the positive spin on it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive. So we have been kind of in discussions about this, about how to fix that, and then doing some intensive copywriting, content editing to make sure that the information on our website is more readable, comprehensible, and relatable to everyday constituents. We have about 3 phases that we've identified in this project. So you can see running from June to hopefully launching in April of 2027. That is the ultimate goal. Phase 1, which is the phase that we're in right now, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. Information gathering and cost estimates. Phase 2, getting an agreement with the website builder, both through Octo. Content production and a synchronous build. running through the winter months. And then phase 3 beta testing, launching it and doing the publicity behind our website as part of the 20th anniversary. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, thank you. So phase 1, we kind of kicked off in June. So we have several work streams that like we have, okay, sorry, go back. Our objective, no, yeah. Our objective for this phase is kind of establishing some user-centered information architecture. And the functional requirements kind of identify those elements sufficient for the Office of the Chief Technology Officer to prepare a cost estimate for us. That's kind of the first objective that we have. We have several work streams that are part of this phase, some of which have been completed, some of which are in progress, and some of which are nearing being in progress. So technical scoping, meeting with Octo to identify information that we would have to give them so that they could prepare a cost estimate for us. So that we can look at our budget for the upcoming year, see what aligns, see what we could actually make feasible. User delivery, user needs discovery. So kind of getting information from small, like targeted groups of external stakeholders, identify some of like the common things that they come to our website for, some of the questions that they have, like when they visit it, any navigational concerns, and information architectural kind of struggles that they kind of encounter. Both of those have been completed thus far. We kicked off with a very robust call with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer's web design contractor. And since the policy and research team and me have been having some pretty like robust kind of exercises and discussions to explore like, okay, like, well, how can we do better storytelling with our website? Like, what is kind of missing on our current website? Like, what do we think needs to be incorporated? And each individual, Haley, Darren, Jen, Sana, Elise, and I, have kind of envisioned like what like a website could look like as the internal subject matter experts on the work that does happen here. And kind of done a really productive job, I think, a really happy job of synthesizing our individual kind of visions for that. And then some other work streams that are currently in progress. So we are currently working to kind of like finish our list of features that we want integrated into the website. So things like interactive calendars, can we store a repository of like public meeting recordings on there, document management portals, resolution management portals, so that we're not kind of stuck in this space of Dropbox or Airtable and like those embeds on the website that kind of get a little finicky for some people. So we've been continuing that and recently just opened up the kind of information architecture exercises that our internal team has been working on to the wider executive office team for their input. In which afterwards we would love to send that to you guys to get your thoughts before we can do the last kind of like work stream in this of getting this information over to the web design contractor with Octo so that they can get us that cost estimate. And that's kind of like what's been happening with this over the past 2 months. So I would love to hear any thoughts, questions that you guys may have about like where we are right now or like where we're going. Because I do have a pretty robust project overview that's not up there.
All right, Vice President Goulet. I just want to say, this really sounds incredibly exciting. I think the challenge and the balance you always have to face is you probably have 2 types of users. Like a lot of people who will just log in to kind of get current events and like hot topics on the website. So having that on the main page in a way that is exciting and user friendly, and then kind of those who use it on a deeper level to really dig in and get the resolutions and pull documents off of it.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure, like the one ask I would have is just like, I find the content very useful on the website. But that's like, you know, so don't sacrifice content. Yeah, you have all that content there still, but just you may be making it like a layer down, so that like a user who just wants to see what's going on at the state board can go on there and find like the hot documents or the issues of the day, like this graduation task force or something.
And I think the policy research team and I have like really done a good
Yeah.
job of envisioning how that's more readily accessible to people. And I would love to, like, after, like, we get the wider executive offices team feedback on like the sitemap that we produce from those discussions. Would love to open that up to you guys so that you can leave those comments in there too. Because right now, like, we're not even like at the stage of like actually writing the new web pages. We're just trying to envision like where things get. But those are always like really good notes for us as like we start writing new content in the coming months, like hopefully starting in November. That we have those notes with us so that we can take that in. Yeah.
But I also want to say, I think it's gonna be important for us to know, it's like, our website has so many words. And for example, when the city administrator's office, when we sent them our performance plan, they was like, oh, you're missing this section, so we went to your website and we pulled it. And I looked at what you posted, I have no idea where you got this from. I don't know what information this is. She's like, oh, these are your objectives. I'm like, no, the board just passed strategic objectives in November. Like, where did you get this from? The page she was looking at on the website was not the page that has anything current on which the board had done. And so, like, how do we right size that? Because it is there, it's all written. And it's only about you page, but it wasn't like the board's new strategic priorities. So it's like finding a way to like keep it. Because the relevant stuff was there, but when she did a search for what, it didn't come up. And it was just like, I'm like, oh. When she added, I felt bad. I was like, I had no idea where she got this information. Like, I've been on the website. I was like, no, and I sent her the link for the priority. She's like, oh, I didn't see this page. And so I want to avoid that as much as possible. So if someone who is actually working for the government, looking at government websites, can't find what the state board's priorities are, I think that's like, I want to be able to solve that problem.
And that speaks to like another really like pressing need to do this is that the system that we use to manage this website is so outdated and nobody here actually has like the authorization through Octo to like make those kind of like those navigational, those information architectural changes. Like I can't update the navigation bars like with my current editing privileges. And sometimes it's so finicky, like the other day, or way back, like when we first launched the student advisory committee application, just getting the little tile to look right on the homepage took me about 2 hours of just like hair pulling to get it right. Like, and it is just such an outdated.
You know that time?
No, so those are some of the things that we're bearing in mind and as like we kind of like approach.
I'm looking for other questions or comments. Seeing smiles and things like that.
Yeah, and so there will come another time when he asks you to look at fonts and colors and all of those things. We are not there yet. Yes.
It was when she said fonts and colors. Do we have a brand guide for the agency?
Yes.
And when we redo the website, will we also be updating the brand guide at all? Or will we, because I'm imagining there might be new possibilities.
We actually just revamped this. Like,
Yeah,
back
our brand
in-
guide is 90-year-old.
We're trying to like start like, if you've noticed, there are new colors that are getting used in things. We're trying to transition everything over to that. You know, maybe, I think a good example is probably this student advisory committee flyer that's gotten posted. It's not like the bold red and like they're like a little bit softer colors, a little bit softer fonts than I think have been used before.
Should we be using the brand guide as members, given like sometimes we send letters and things like that? I mean, like, I remember when I first came on the board, they sent us a, letterhead,
Mhm.
which I would assume is now out of date or not aligned to the brand guide, like if are there. No, I mean,
We don't, like, we have not updated the letterhead. yet.
Well, yeah, cause I think for a while it's like
Because we,
trying to find out what you all had before any of us got here. It's been harder, cause I didn't know everybody had there.
I've been sending members the same.
right,
Yeah,
that's
so
what I
it's like, maybe, I mean, that, we make sure to update, cause like we've updated our set of slides. Cause that when I first started, it was like this red slides with all these lines and circles. I was like, gotta get rid of this, cause my eyes can't do, but like Andrew went through, updated the color palette, changed just like, and we can share that with you all, but we can also go in and update the letter template, to correspond to the brand.
there are a lot of these like components of like our visual facing, our public facing things that need to be updated. And it's getting added to our list of things, yes. So I can share that with you, yeah.
I was curious, so there's a bunch of pages on the website that just go on for pages and pages and pages. Is it possible that we could implement like accordions where if you wanna click on the history?
We are very much
Yes.
that, yes, like these are some of the things that like we're bearing in mind. Like, and we've even had like kind of like aside conversations, like as we've been kind of like, okay, like, well, which page belong, like, which kind of like content group should like we have on like here and like which subgroups, like, okay, what pages slot in there, how to like. Not formally yet, but like just be thinking in mind, like how like the information that would go on such a page, how would be the best way to be able to like put that on there without overwhelming people. Yes, so we have been thinking about that. We have like accordion that we coded onto our graduation task force page, but that took a very long
Other comments? Yes, Representative King.
Not necessarily a question, but I actually make a lot of websites, and so I'm happy to, I'm not sure if Octo would be the one implementing the changes to the website, but I'm happy to help however I can.
I would love to tap like your perspectives and your expertise. I can loop you into those conversations. That would be very helpful. We just selected a finalist for Tom's Fellow. But as of right now, it's just kind of like me kind of like managing it. It's data. So the more eyes and the more thoughts that can be contributed to it, the better. So thank you for that.
Representative Lynn.
So from my understanding of the website, there's like there's bundles of information on there, and it's open to the public so that like families, parents, and students, or anyone can see what we're doing with the state board. But my question is, since there's like so much information, how are we able to make that accessible and translate it into a language that like everybody can understand these new policies and history of the state board in simple terms, because of like specific families who their first language might not be English or other barriers. So how are we able to make all of this information like into simpler terms for the public to understand?
That is a very good point, and that is one of the primary reasons why we are doing this. And there is going to be a very intensive editing process. And when I say editing, I kind of mean more of like a full new like rewrite. It's just going to be rewritten so that we can ensure that the language that we're using is more it's easier, it's more accessible to people, it's more readable, it's more relatable to people. And as part of the website too, there will be accessibility features that are going to be on our features wish list. And I mean, we actually have to have those kind of features by law anyway. So these are things that we are thinking about, and they will be part of that. And that's kind of like one of the primary reasons that this is it is taking place to begin with. Yeah.
Other comments? All right. All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate it. All right. Due to the need for repairs to the old council chambers, we shifted our expert panel on raise screen time to a roundtable. The roundtable took place this past Monday, and I must say, for those who joined, it was very well done.
It was.
Very well done. And the Life Readiness Committee. This is our time to debrief, discuss, and decide on any concrete next steps. Members, you have in your materials a summary document with key highlights from the roundtable. Are there any thoughts or suggestions from the members based on what they heard? And the first hand that went up was right next to me is Representative Goulet.
I just want to thank the co-chairs of the committee for hosting such a thoughtful and really informative roundtable. Thank the staff that helped put that together. I mean, I want to echo something that Representative Chang said last time, which is the need for trying to get something done before council takes action on this. And I know we're going to probably learn soon, hopefully, what the scheduled council hearings officially looks like. I know there was discussion of maybe this coming up in October initially. I mean, what I would love to see as our next steps is to take everything we heard from that roundtable, to take the extensive parental engagement that's already occurred in our public meeting. And try to get a resolution that Representative Best has introduced and sent to committee and referred there. Just to take a look at edits to that based on the public engagement. And then try to see if we can get something out, because I think it would be very beneficial, like this board did with cell phones, to be able to send over what our resolution is before council takes it up. And then to be able to have a representative, which would probably be either President Patterson, if we've done testimony, or Executive Director Butler providing testimony at DC Council when they do have their hearing on this. We'll be able to present our resolution, present testimony, and that will really, I think, allow us to express what our position is collectively as a board. So I just would like to support that.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a? Oh, I mean, how do I put this? I personally, I'm not so sure, this is the place for council action. Or don't understand why that is the appropriate venue outside of the fact that, we just go to council for everything. Is there a hope that we would have from the board as far as what action we would like them to take? Do we have a sense of that yet?
I purposed this for myself. I know they said they were going to have a hearing on this topic potentially. I mean, I don't know what the next steps would be. I'd want to work with you and work with parents and people who are concerned about this. I mean, perhaps it could be something as simple as us putting out a resolution with our recommendations and then the executive branch working with us to incorporate those in. I mean, I don't know that there needs to be legislation on this per se. Ultimately, we may find that there is, and then there's a couple paths. One, the board could draft legislation and collectively introduce it, or DC Council could introduce legislation. I just think probably it's unrealistic that any bill is going to get 2 votes at this point before the end of the council period, and it will sunset anyway. So, I mean, I just want to be prepared as a board for the council hearing to be able to assert ourselves, because I think in the absence of that, we're really not getting our voice out there, and then council may feel the need to go in a direction following the hearing.
Other comments?
And I'll just say credit to Haley and Jen for assembling the panel and
Excellent.
and the questions. I agree, it was very well done. It was well done by them. And yeah, I thought the discussion was good. I do feel like there is some work to be done to kind of coalesce around, I mean, we have the draft resolution and then kind of integrating like what we heard here and what we've heard in the subsequent public meetings. But I do hope that we can. I'm kind of thinking we might not have as hard of lines or detailed lines as we might want, but it's hard after that. The first speaker is like, don't fixate too much on exact time limits and stuff like that. Is a point well taken.
Thank you, sir. Now, about to your representative, Director Butler.
I just have a question for members, it's like, what do you all actually think about the content, like, were there things you agree with and you didn't agree with? Like, I'm hearing a lot about what we should do next, but I actually don't know what you all think about it.
I'm gonna go to Representative Hamburg, real quick.
Yes, I think it's a great session. Something I really wanted to reinforce was the idea of intentionality behind screen use, that every time that a student is using a screen, there should be a clear purpose for that. And that should serve a learning goal in some way better than without using that screen. I think in a lot of ways, screen use has become the default and we've kind of lost track of it. When this is actually serving a clear learning purpose, in addition to just using pencil and paper, which has so many other benefits.
Very well, sir. Representative Williams.
Yeah, I'll say one thing and then I'm gonna have to head out early today. I think at the high school level in particular, with regards to AI, whatever policies we have with AI, I think it was mentioned twice at the end of the session that like we also have to teach high schoolers and talk with high schoolers about what are and are not appropriate uses of AI, because like even in just some of the classes that I've had this year, like a lot of students are using AI. So even if we like ban AI, like New York City, like kind of banned like LLMs up until high school today. But there's still like recommendations and guidance so that like we can have an official policy of what should or shouldn't be used in the classroom. But I also think we need to involve teachers and parents and students in like what are appropriate uses to be able to use this and what are not appropriate uses. Because whether or not like we allow it or don't allow it in the classroom, students are still gonna like use it.
Thank you.
And are you all lumping together AI with screen time with student data privacy and concerns, or are you all thinking about it as three separate things? I'm just curious. I don't have any thought one way or the other. I just didn't know like how you all were thinking about the topics.
Thank you, Representative Gillette.
I mean, I'll respond to Executive Director Butler's question. I mean, for me, I'm looking at three things. I mean, one, Representative Ehrenberg already expressed better than I could ever say it. I mean, which was that we really need to make sure that as we do this, we are like using this with intentionality. I think the other thing is transparency, though. That's really, I hear over and over again, is parents knowing what they are, what their kids are accessing so that they're informed. And then I think you mentioned another issue that keeps coming up, which is safety, making sure that students aren't being exposed to inappropriate materials, and then that their data is protected and not being data mined. I think those are the key issues for me. I mean, I think AI is just one element of that we need to try to balance in this, making sure that it's useful, educationally useful, and intentionally used. And then making sure that students aren't exposed to things that they shouldn't be. So I think all of those things that you mentioned should be part of this because they connect together.
Representative Best.
I think they connect, but I think they're different. And I think that we should be treating them differently. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think that there are interconnectivity components of it, but interconnected components, but I don't think that we should be treating those two things as the same thing.
Or Representative?
Yeah,
Ehrenberg?
and responding to that question of are these connected, I think there's not an issue of students using AI with handwritten assignments. And as well as the data, like for example, if we have to write a paper in our classes, we then turn it in And then that data is collected by Turnitin.com or some other platform, which then uses our essays to train their AI models to help reinforce these plagiarism and AI detectors. We don't get to consent to that turn in our assignments. And so I think it's really important that students and educators know exactly how AI is using that data. And that just wasn't an issue before when students hand wrote assignments and those in.
Thank you. Representative Councilman Johnson Law.
I still think they're two separate issues, though, specifically like with the screen time. Yes, there are elements to it, but they're still two separate things. And to Director Butler's point about like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Reviewing information instead of a solution. Is it honestly, is it just a letter to council? It doesn't have to necessarily be a resolution. Like, what exactly are we trying to say? Is it the amount of screen time? Is it the boards, right? That teachers are using? Is it in response to, I know there were some conversations about YouTube, right? Like, and use that in place of a lesson or something of that nature, especially for little ones. And so I think as a board, we do need to come to some type of consensus as to, and again, we don't have to, but to Director Butler's point, what are we now, what do you want to do with this information? And like, what do we want to say? Is it something that we agree with? Is it something we disagree with? But I do think that AI is just another can of worms. I think that should all, I think that's another bucket. That's just Dr. Rivera.
Representative Team.
I really agree with that point. I think that AI usage is something that we can't really exactly control just by talking about like screen time controls. When I think about screen time, when I was in that meeting, I was interpreting it as students are on websites which they shouldn't be on. Students are watching YouTube. Students are playing games in class. The things that are issues before the AI era, and I think that we should probably address that separate issue about AI usage, because I think that AI usage is something that can't be regulated as easily, because, for example, a student could take an assignment home and then just use AI at home. I think it would be at least more productive if we took in the expert advice from this meeting and then used it sort of, not necessarily sure on an exact result, but think about ways to prevent the more common issues with screen time, which is just that students are using screen time at inappropriate times, and then using screens at inappropriate times, and then AI usage is something that can be addressed later.
Sir. Representative Miles Rosario.
I have a question like the screen time. Do students like have higher screen times because of their accessibility to technology, or is it their lack of like engagement in class? Because I know with certain students, they use technology as a way to escape the boring reality of class and the mundane tasks that they have to do. And then for other students that they use technology to like help enhance their learning per se by using like AI for like research and things of that nature. So I'm asking if is it the mundane task or is it like something else?
I mean, it came up during a round table. I think it's a question of the value of like not just the time a student is spending on the device, but the purpose. Like, why are they on the device? And so when Representative Henderson referenced the first speaker saying like the most important thing isn't minutes. I think it's not the exact end of that comment, but the reference is like the most important thing is why are they using the tool? Is it the like highest and best use of that? Like, do they need to be on the screen to do an activity or not? And is that adding value? I think it's less so when we think about like cell phone policies, and which now have extended to smartphones and tablets and other things, when we are talking about non-instructional uses. So if that is, I'm sitting in this meeting now, maybe I am shopping instead of participating in the state board meeting. That's not necessarily a policy we are talking about. It's more like how should teachers be encouraging or discouraging certain use of screens and technology. Does that answer your question? Or at least that's what I took from the roundtable. Separate thing I would say about what I heard Representative Ironberg say. Am I saying that correctly? Ehrenberg, okay, I thought so. I have not called you that, I've called you by your first name, so welcome. What I heard him say is less about AI as relates to assignment completion, plagiarism, that kind of thing. What I hear him talking about is privacy and consent. And I do think that is one of the things that have come up in the conversations, whether we're talking about certain websites that track their policies or licensing and that kind of thing. And so yes, I do believe that AI usage as an instructional tool is a different topic. But I hear exactly what you're saying when it relates to AI and other technological tools and privacy and data sharing questions. That's what I heard you raise.
Thank you, Representative Colson.
Again, I want to echo that was a great roundtable. I think what I heard when we first started hearing from the parents during our public meetings is that they wanted the option to opt out, which again goes back to consent. And I think what's his name, Torre? I should know his name, Torre. I worked with him at Cardozo. That question was asked, where parents can find that to opt out, and he wasn't able to speak to that. So one of the questions that I have to your question is that something that is accessible? Where can parents find that? Because that may be low hanging fruit that we can quickly give them the information to that. That would be something I would like to see if they had that option.
Mr. Torrey said during the roundtable that that was outside of his expertise,
Right.
that he would have I believe, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs reach out with the answer.
Okay. So if we can get that, that would be helpful.
Dr. Johnson Lawson.
I just wanted to say it was a great discussion and to say thank you to the staff for including COPA. They have really great trainings. They have really great conferences to ensure that we're including our students who have disabilities, who have a wide range of pedagogical use. And so I'll just uplift and say thank you to our amazing staff with that.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Henderson.
Just add another aspect of this that we haven't talked about yet is when our LEAs are investing a lot of money and time into specific education, curriculum, technology, and making sure that it is beneficial for students. There was a lot of discussion about iReady, and it's difficult to navigate the research that's available on iReady, and a lot of it is conducted or published by, the company that made it. It's hard to figure out like what's good evidence, what's not good evidence, and so I think having some guidelines or help on where to look for arbiters of that evidence, it would be really helpful.
Thank you. Are there last time?
I was just gonna say, this panel was really focused on screen time, so a lot of the other topics you mentioned, evaluating ed tech, student data privacy, those are also issues we could explore more in the future.
Thank you.
So is the committee then gonna go back and you guys want people to send you concrete things or?
No.
Just, but you all will take it, because I just don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's gonna die after it leaves here and nobody ever picks it up again.
My email is on the website somewhere. You can email me any thoughts.
Somewhere.
Wow.
Or like, is there additional work you want the staff to work on? Do you want us to?
We're
I
still
don't know,
working
just
on
whatever
that.
it is, because like, we don't mind doing it, we just wanna make sure we are meeting the need that you all have. And then like, we didn't wanna be here next month and we haven't provided anything else or giving you what else you needed to do this work or.
Well, I would say I don't think it was our individual need. I think we were trying to fill a gap of having, timely information, before the board. As I understood it, one of the next steps, was and this is not committee led, but, members wants to do some additional engagement, with, constituencies around this topic, because, there has been, a specific group that's before us and that, I know Representative Goulet and Representative Chang are working to, follow back up, with their constituents. And I know then there have also been things raised around who is not at the table, before we, move forward. So those are the things that other board members I know have identified, but are not necessarily committee led. I think our task as a committee, was to get this done to keep the conversation going. And maybe it is helpful once those engagements happen, if there are specific items and next steps, then we can better answer that question. But it sounded like folks wanted to be able to respond to constituencies and then broaden constituencies before we made any decisions.
Dr. Johnson.
So I know the hearing is coming up, so by a certain time, like, does the board want to provide a letter to council on this? Like, even with all of us doing our individual things and us having this roundtable and committee, like, I'm just thinking about timing with this council hearing that's coming up. Like, is this something that we want to provide the board's perspective on, or is it just, this is something that the board just wants to make sure that we are aware and have, like, not us being experts, but basically like us basically reaching out and listening to the experts to be able to get a better handle on what's going on.
Representative Goulet wants to respond.
Yeah, I think for me on that, I would like to try to get our process as far along as possible on this before council has its hearing. Now, I don't know whether, if there's a big difference if it's early October or the end of October, because that would then give us a vastly different amount of time. I mean, I would love to continue public engagement if it's near the end of October, but if it's early October, I think we have between Representative Best's draft resolution, like extensive discussion at the public meetings on this, a really helpful expert panel that we just had. I mean, I think we have so much public engagement already on this. I mean, we'll continue to reach out to other groups and would love other groups to comment on this. I can just speak for Ward 3 on it. This is the number one issue for parents in Ward 3. They're deeply concerned about the overuse and non-transparency of screens for particularly younger children at the elementary grades. I mean, it's the top issue that people have raised with me. And they want to know what their children are being exposed to. And they want to make sure that it's not an overexposure and there's intentionality in every device, every app that children are using. And I'd like to move quickly on it so we can get something over to council that's thoughtful and that addresses the concerns.
Yes, just to say, like, the live work before the committee is, we have the resolution and we're just trying to integrate all the new information as we get it. That would include anything anybody wants to send on to.
They have your email.
They have my email.gov.
And so would it be helpful for like the staff to put together any other, because I know Hazel shared that the panel were focused on screen time. I mean, would it be helpful to have other research about any of the other topics that you all have mentioned?
All right.
I'm gonna go with just not at this point.
Okay.
It sounds like we do have some next steps. If at our next committee meeting, we hear back that other things have been raised, we might be able to answer that differently. But I think it's a not at this point, nothing specifically identified.
All right, thank you guys for the discussion. Members, we had previously voted to have our September public meeting panel on the topic of virtual learning. However, The repairs in the old council chambers will not be completed by then. As a next step, Vice President Goulet and I are suggesting that we move the virtual learning panel to November. We would also keep the bullying topic as the topic for October. Do members have any questions on that, so to speak? Representative Goulet?
I just want to support what you're recommending on that. I think since it is bullying prevention month, having the bullying topic remain in October is very timely, and it might encourage more people to pay attention to it, focus on it. And I doubt we will have a major snow event, in November. Knock on wood. So I think I think it's really, with this in particular, it's really important to hear from other jurisdictions. So being able to have those experts testify before the board, I think will be really useful. And I think we'll still be able to get concrete recommendations in November before, we have a risk of a snow issue that closes down school for a length of time. So I think the timeline works out, and I appreciate you making this adjustment.
Thank you. And Representative Johnson Law, I know this was something that very, and we had some conversations. If you wanted to provide any other comments or anything.
Okay, because like the whole point is to get other people to the meeting, and if we can't get them there, then
Exactly.
I'm willing to be patient. So we get them.
Thank you.
I will say, DCS has identified a contractor and they have an updated timeline that goes to hope to have the work done by the end of September. Wonderful. So we are moving in the right direction.
Knock on wood. Okay.
All wood.
So am I understanding that means we don't have a panel for September?
That is what that looks like.
Yes, I was waiting for you to get to that. I didn't
Yes,
want
ma'am.
to. I was
Unless
like,
you all want to do in person.
But
But
together in 2 weeks.
yes. But that would be, there will be no panel. In September, you go off of the recommendation that the president just shared.
I think there will probably be a lot of testimonies on graduation requirements again, especially if we're taking a vote at that particular time. So, that can occupy a lot of that time to go down.
Maybe.
Instead of, maybe.
We didn't get a lot of testimony on graduation requirements last go round. We got testimony on screen time, largely. So I'm like, maybe, I wasn't saying it to suggest one way or the other. I was more so saying to make sure I understood
Okay,
the consequences of the decision.
thank you, ma'am. All right. Looking for any more discussion? Okay. Is there a motion to move the public meeting panel on virtual learning to November? It's been moved by Vice President Lay and seconded by Representative Johnson Law. Is there any more discussion? Being no more discussion, the motion is to move the public meeting panel on virtual learning to November. I will ask for the yeas and the nays on the motion. All in favor? Any nays? The ayes have it, and the motion carried. All right. We will now move to our committee reports. I will call
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry, are we not gonna discuss September? Separately?
It's up to you.
No, so. I get that we are moving to November, but are we saying we just won't have a panel in September? Like, are we gonna have a discussion of if there is something we should be encouraging for September?
We can have that discussion, but I believe we were at the point where we were saying there was not going, we did not have anything planned, but we can have a discussion if there is something that wants to be proposed. In lieu of not having that particular panel and knowing that we are not going to have the capability for the chief or anything. So we can have that discussion at this point. Go right ahead, Johnson.
I think my question is for the staff. Jen brought up the meeting is in 2 weeks, which you won't even have enough time to even get something together. Is that enough time for your outreach and all the things that you all are doing?
I mean, technically, yes, we could start it tomorrow. It just depends on
What the topic is.
yeah, the people you all would want, so, and whether they're available 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
And it would have to be people who could come in person in the DC area.
Yeah.
So is there a topic that someone is proposing for September? That would be my question at this point. That our team would start immediately tomorrow morning to try to galvanize around.
Well, we just had school opening. And I don't know, we cut a lot of ribbons. I don't know what other people's school opening was like, but mine was particularly stressful. Mostly because I had a school that just was a construction site the first week of, like the entire first week of school, and still has for construction. I would be curious to just know how other people's school opening went. If there are things that we're looking, like, we've done panels in the past that are like more targeted to hearing from different constituencies about like everything from what they're looking forward to for the year to a particular issue. Like I'm actually gonna probably write a letter and ask the council to hold an emergency hearing to look at DGS, because I think in good conscience, like some of the things I've seen, especially recently, are not okay for kids safety wise and operationally. I don't know if that's something the board would like to look at. It's like facilities. But it could be a larger back to school question. And people tend to come and want to give their input on certain things, but that is something I know that's at top of mind for me.
I know I
Like
saw
the
your video.
condition our kids are in.
And it was disturbing, some of the things that was in your video, things that, the tour, I believe, of that particular school. And that is a good topic. I know everybody's first week, now we're in the second week, did not go. A lot of, good things happen, but not everybody's winning. And I'm open to having or something about that in September. And I think as long as we keep it to like local agencies, that could be a very good topic. So is there more discussion on that? And if someone wants to propose that. Representative Goulet?
Yeah, I'm gonna support that. That is, the direction you both would want to go, is to have local agencies come in and talk about the first week of school. The other thing we could do in addition to that, I think is something that we did before through our communications team with the budget, is we put out an ask to people through social media and through contacts, just to say that, with the budget, come in to testify before the council on your thoughts for the budget. It was kind of making that like not an official theme of the public meeting, but to really encourage people to come in. We could do the same thing and say, please come in if you have, particular experiences that were really good or really bad for the first week of school. Well, please come in and share those with SBOE. So we could do both. We could have the expert panel, because it might be helpful if people had a bad experience, for some experts from DGS or DCPS to be able to hear that themselves, if they stay for the public testimony. So if that's what you want to do, I'll support it.
And I'm open. Representative Colson.
In that same vein, I'm curious about crossing guards. I don't know if all schools have crossing guards. I know that the school that I serve does not. I know that other schools in Ward 4 do not. So that could align with that same topic as well. I really would like to find out what the problem is with that. How we can troubleshoot that.
I like that. I like where this is going. And also on top of my mind, I know we just instituted the new system for transportation. Would love to hear, how it started in another county. It did not go well, but I want to know, how's it going here, in Junction, where there are problems, where there, routes are in particular, how parents felt about it, this new system that we have, so that they can track their children, pickups, things like that. So it seems as if we're heading toward a panel on, opening, school year opening. However we want to word it, we can figure a title out for it, but that seems to be, where we're aiming, and we're looking at DC government agencies in particular, so to speak, around particular issues, and I think it can work with you guys to kind of put some parameters and things around it. But that's what I'm hearing. Is there other discussion?
Albert, so.
Yeah.
I didn't raise my hand, I just opened my mouth, so.
I just wanted to say, that's a great idea about having OPSI come in and talk about the special education of transportation, because they committed to have certain reforms in place for this school year. I've already heard some rumblings that those may or may not be going well the first week of school. I've heard some positive, some negative. So having them do one of those 4 seats at the table, I would really support it.
This is pretty big, that implementation of that.
Yep.
Big transportation aspect of it, so. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I would imagine some of the agencies might not come before us. We don't have to write to, call agencies when not the council. However, I do think there are other groups we can identify, that would help give us a sense. So, like, it would make sense to invite like teachers unions, so they can tell us what they've heard us in the past. It would make sense, to invite, some of the parent groups, right? So they can, say, hey, look, whether it's PAVE or somebody else, say, hey, this is what we've been hearing across the. It might make sense to invite someone from like our ombudsman's office to say, here's what we've heard in the run up to school opening as far as like complaints or what the questions folks have reached out to us, like that kind of thing, because they or the student advocate's office, like put some of that information to good use. I mean, it doesn't. I'm not arguing against agencies. I am just thinking about the 2-week timeline, and making sure we have folks who can and are willing to speak to the different things to give us a snapshot.
Representative Colson again.
I really would love to hear from students. So if there's a possibility for us to be intentional about holding space to make sure that we hear from the students and perhaps not the same students, groups that we usually hear from, I think that would be worthy.
Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing, and I appreciate Representative Thompson bringing us back to discuss September, not just letting it go by the wayside. And an opportunity to talk about the openings and the successes and some of the other things that did not go as well from our constituents. So I'm going to ask for a motion to have a September expert panel. School operations panel, expert panel. So I'm gonna ask someone to move a motion.
So moved.
It has been moved by Representative Colson. Can I get a second? The second by Representative Johnson Law. So all in favor? Any nays? Abstentions? Ayes have it. All right. Thank you guys again for just keeping us on point. We will now move to our committee reports. I will call on each committee in alphabetical order, and each chair or co-chairs will share updates and answer any questions from members. We will start, gentleman that is next to me, Vice President Administrator, Representative Goulet.
Now, and I'll try to be brief here. I think there's a couple things, everybody has the summary in here. There's a couple things that are worth pointing out though. One is that the Ombudsman and the Office of the Student Advocate are finalizing their annual reports right now. They're in that process. And one thing the board is committed to do is after the Office of the Student Advocate puts out their annual report, there's their student safety report, that we're going to really promote some of the initiatives in there, help get the word out about that. That was in our strategic plan. And then maybe we'll want to move forward on some of their recommendations. So that's something that's underway, and Mr. Davis has that on track. The other thing that I really want to point out and give credit to is our executive director for her hard work on the position realignment that they've undertaken. Trying to make sure that position descriptions are updated, that the org chart is cleaned up and solid. And this seems like a minor issue, but it's actually not, because making sure that you have staff positions that have room for growth within and that are on the right grade is really essential for helping retain high quality staff. So I think this is something that is really going to benefit the board down the line, because we've created room for professional growth within the grades, and we've helped align the grades across ourselves and then our 2 satellite sister offices with the board. So I just want to thank you, Bernice, for all your work on this, and it's really exciting to see it put in like in final form here with the board. So I'll just take questions at this time if anybody has questions.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions whatsoever. I do want to co-sign complimenting our director and the leadership continuously improving our office. This is just another iteration of things that we're improving. We heard earlier about our website, so I appreciate you. So thank you, ma'am. All right, next is college career and life readiness. We already debriefed the roundtable, but is there anything else the co-chairs want to add related to the committee?
No.
Seeing two shakes of the head from our co-chair, so no. All right, thank you both. Next, we will hear from the Inclusion and Excellence Committee about their work to support early career teachers.
There's only one member.
Okay.
That'll be me.
That would be you.
So we met in early August and decided that
One second, brother. Turn that, it's down to science. There you go.
All right, so at our committee meeting in August, we decided that at this working session, we would share with you our work on early career teacher focus groups. This grows out of one of the board's strategic initiatives, which is supporting early career teachers. And the major piece of work that we did around this is that we contracted to have focus groups with early career teachers, as well as others in schools who are charged with supporting early career teachers. So we've got some slides to share about that study. So again, trying to hear directly from early career teachers and also those people who support them. You can see who we were able to engage. We thought that a focus group would allow for rich data collection. We tried to have very representative sample. Over 450 teachers applied, and we ultimately talked to 36 participants. Can you go to the next one? You can see the key takeaways from the study itself. So these were the themes that emerged across multiple focus groups. It's largely consistent with what we've heard as the board has done this work over many years. Early career teachers have large workloads that include administrative demands. They're seeking strong mentorship, supportive leadership, collaboration, as well as professional growth opportunities. You go to the next. If you look at this chart, we were asking participants to prioritize what kinds of supports they thought would be most helpful. And you can see that workload reduction and time support. So like by time support, we mean like protecting their time, whether it's the planning time that they expected to have to make sure they were able to actually use that. And then you can see the other supports that were ranked, mentorship programs, and compensation, rounding out the top three there. I can go to the next. So our contractor or researcher came back to us with these recommendations that you can read there. Again, the top one being around protective time and workload reduction. And you can go to the next. So from those recommendations, trying to integrate those recommendations into the longer stream of work that the board has been doing on this, we wanted to highlight these three specific recommendations to prioritize and push for. And on this slide, you'll see some sort of definitive things and then some like four-year consideration items that we really want to hear from the fuller board, what you think about this. So consensus on the first one, protecting planning time. It's been raised consistently. It's something that the board has talked about before as something to protect. Strengthening mentorship programs is something that we've talked about in the past as well. We had the resolution at the end of 2023, about that. And so here, if you would focus in on the consideration there. The focus group participants weren't asking for anything new, but the board could potentially update this recommendation to explicitly continue to push for a statewide mentoring and induction program. Again, that's what we recommended at the end of 2024 in a resolution. And this research kind of bears out that that's something that teachers, early career teachers, think would be helpful. And then on the third one, on the broader point, we wanted to push for richer data collection on DC's early career teachers. And one of the things that the board has advocated for in the past is a universal exit survey for teachers leaving. DCPS does this, but the charter LEAs may or may not. And it's something that the board raised in the Data Warehouse Act that it transmitted to council many years ago, and then we did a second time, I believe. So that's another thing we would like to hear from the board, if that's something we should continue to push for.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
I just want to thank you. I support all three of those. I mean, the other things that I hear from my teachers, which may be slightly unique to Ward 3, is the planning thing's huge. So that was the job creep. What they also mentioned though is like the overcrowding of the classrooms being a big challenge for like trying to maintain student discipline, and then just workload associated with having more students. So that may be a relatively unique challenge. And then the other thing that gets brought up from time to time by teachers is just the homework policy of like students being able to turn in late work at any time and then having to go back and grade a semester's worth of work. I would really like the board to be able to focus in on that, because I think it's doing two things. It's burning teachers out because it's harder to grade the homework, but it's also teaching our students a terrible habit, just that they can put off doing their assignments, until later, and that they still then get credit for them. So those would be the only things I would add to what you guys are doing, but this was really great. I would love to get the PowerPoint too.
Sure, and we also have a full focus group report.
Okay, great.
That is available to all of you. I'll say that the second point you made about the homework policy and the grading policy, the committee on college career and life readiness is working through that with the help of Dr. Colson.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's kind of parallel, but it's good to note the connection where those are related.
And I would ask Representative Goulet, are you hearing that from, again, your early career teachers, or more seasoned teachers, or all teachers? Like, I think that was, because I think this particular focus group only focused on early career teachers.
I mean, it's all teachers that are raising it, but it's kind of, those are the top two concerns across the board. For all teachers across the spectrum, experience and new teachers. So, and I think it would just be particularly difficult, like with the planning, the emphasis, like new teachers tell me, is they need time to be able to plan their assignments out. But like it keeps getting eaten up by like having to be called away to do like a proctoring duty or something like that. And then on top of that, then they get slammed with like having about 24% more children than the classroom really supports. And then students turning work in throughout the entire semester. So it's like a whole host of issues that are magnified when you're early in the career, because you're trying to then kind of learn the process and get experience with writing lessons. So, but long way of answering that, it's probably something that goes across the board.
Cause I wanna find a way to elevate like the methodology and also like actual research and combine that with like, the word is not quality, but like the user experience that people have from their awards. Cause I think one of the concerns that when we put out like research or put out like recommendations based on research that people often come back to the board, they wasn't like, it wasn't valid, it wasn't done with a rigorous method, it wasn't done like with all these things, and so we were very intentional about making sure that it met all of those boxes before, so that when people come back and say what it is and what it isn't, we have a research methodology that aligns with scientific rigor. That combats that, so that they don't really have an opportunity to say these aren't real issues, or you only did this, or it was selective and that. And so I'm trying to find a way to marry the two so that we get the perspectives of individual constituents across wards and still the rigorous research methodology that speaks to the work that the committee has been involved in. It's like final, and I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm sure there is, I'm just thinking out loud, so like, how do we capture both? And what will ultimately be put out to the public. And maybe it's adding, take the researcher, then adding factual case study, like just other different things, so I'm just thinking.
I have a question about the mentorship.
Mhm.
You all noted that, and this is not new, or they're not asking for anything new. Does that mean like this is not a new concept? Because I know that mentorship is not a new concept, or does that mean there are specific programs that or approaches that people liked? Is it just an expansion in the number of years? Like what was the difference in what folks wanted versus what they currently are experiencing?
So I think I would need to look back at the report to answer you fully.
I can read it whenever it's in.
Sure. But it was also kind of across the board as to whether a teacher was in a position where they did have something like that, or if they didn't have that at all. And we are just kind of acknowledging that some LEAs do have a mentorship program. Some had programs that have been discontinued or
there was one participant who said, like, I do have a mentor, but that person's, and they're great, but they're so busy that they don't really mentor me that much. So I've been doing a lot on my own. So it did sound like a combination of responses, but perhaps the most consistent was like, I think what the vendors may be trying to say is like, they didn't hear as much of, we need new mentorship program, or we want like a statewide thing necessarily.
but they do want mentorship.
Yeah.
Like in the general sense, that was a talk.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Your other questions, comments? All right, so thank you. Next is student experience and engagement. Dr. Colson.
Yes, we had a great meeting. Thank you to Dr. Fleischer and everyone else involved in putting that together. We heard from Ernest Shepherd, who is with the Office of Human Rights. He is the POC for bullying investigations. Let me flip that, bullying prevention. And he also collects data annually from our schools. He also does training on bullying prevention. And then we coupled that with our dear friend, Mr. Copeland from DME and the new Office of School Safety, and he gave the overview of his office. And then, of course, we had lots of questions. basically aligned to the questions that we've asked among ourselves and during our public meetings as well, related to bullying, of course, and student safety. For the new school safety office, the clarity was provided that this is not necessarily an office that necessarily works directly with students and parents, but more so coordinating and working with all of the schools so that there is a nexus, if you will, to make sure all of that information is getting out very quickly to everyone who needs to be involved. And from that, we have some takeaways. But I guess I'll discuss that in new business, but that was our meeting and it was a great one. Do you have anything you want to add?
I think it was, I mean, you and Dr. Fleischer did an amazing job at setting up that discussion. I think it was really helpful and I think really helped get us to where we need to be with what you're trying to get done with the strategic plan goals. So I just really, if anybody wants to, has time to kill, they should go back and watch that discussion.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, members, are there any external committee updates or reports anyone wants to share? Representative Henderson?
Yes, the research collaborative met last week, I think. And I just want to let you know kind of what research they have in the pipeline, and then if you are interested in any of these specifically, if you let me know, I can follow up with more. But the current projects in the pipeline are career development opportunities for DCPS, the impact of career and technical ed programs of study. There's a project on equitable discipline, the youth participatory action research, which the collaborative did in partnership with the student advisory committee, is still ongoing and renewed. So that will happen again this coming year. And then one on the effects of immigration enforcement on school communities.
Thank you, sir. Representative Jocelyn?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. The Environmental Literacy Advisory Committee, we met on August 12th. There was some back to school share outs. There was a big recap on the Chesapeake Bay Leadership Summit that happened in May. There's also going to be an upcoming retreat that's coming up, so looking forward to that. A share out of fall activities and future meeting topics. So I think it was more like getting us ready, you know, for the school meetings to come, but we did have a meeting and wanted to share out what we talked about.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Any questions from either? Representative Thompson?
I don't have a question for the committee report outs, but after at our last public meeting, we talked about possibly sending an email with regard to the I can't remember what it's called, is it impact, or is it teacher evaluation more broadly? Did we send that?
I think we would discuss that in new business. But I don't think we've seen that.
No, we're sharing with them tomorrow. And it's on the agenda. Items we see further. We meet with them tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments, external or anything else? All right, thank you. We will now move to new business. Members, do you do we have any current members? We do not have any current items on the list. Do you have any for discussions? Thank you.
Yes, to add to the new business agenda, just a very brief discussion of off-campus safety incidents, how they relate to discipline for purposes of kind of referring and connecting that to student disciplines already within the committee, C committee.
Okay. Are there others?
Yes, the bullying task force. Want to discuss reinstating that. And then also discussion on student wellness.
Are there others? Dr. Fletcher?
Reopening the applications for the student advisory committee and targeting schools that are underrepresented.
Others? All right, I have 4 now, so I'll state them and then we'll start. Off-campus incidents, Boulay, bullying task force, Colson, wellness, Colson, and reopening the SAC application. Like, start with you, Boulay.
Yeah, so I put this on the agenda just to quickly discuss the concerns that the residents Ward 3 have. Like this, I think the issue of student discipline is already within the committee right now, Dr. Fleischer, is that?
Sorry,
Do we have within the C committee already like an examination of student discipline? Do you know, or maybe, you know,
your examination of student
discipline, is it already been referred to committee? I'm just trying to make sure procedurally we can take up the issue.
I mean, we've been discussing it.
Okay, but it's in the committee. Okay, so I'll just then briefly, we don't need to refer to this here and I'll just explain what the concerns are. So, I mean, in Jackson Reed, we had a student who was killed off campus. Now, what we're hearing is that students know roughly who was involved with this incident. The students are still at the school and nothing's being done about it and no information is being shared at all. And that may be because there's an active investigation going on. But I think everyone's a bit on edge because, you know, everybody knows who is involved and they're still right there in school. The other issue happened at I was gonna say MacArthur, but it's not MacArthur anymore, it's Thompson High School. At Thompson High School, there was a situation where a student was stashing a gun on private property. So he'd come to school every day with a gun, stash it in a neighbor's bush, and then pick the gun up at the end of the day. Now, that student may be, you know, worried someone's, you know, using that to protect themselves, because they're worried somebody's gonna do something to them. There may be other less, you know, self-preservation purposes for that gun, but it's a huge concern. The student's been identified, you know, but what we're hearing is there's nothing that can be done by DCPS to keep the student out of school, even for a brief period of time to figure out what's going on, because what we're hearing is that DCPS cannot in any way reflect off-campus incidents in, you know, in keeping that student out of school, even though there's a like, immediate threat and there was just a gun student stash in a bush and they've identified the student. Now, if the student's arrested, then I guess that can be done so that can keep the student out of school. But like, this is a significant concern. It's these off-campus incidences where perpetrators are known, but nothing is done. And they're just, I think it's a cause for concern and maybe reevaluation of what we maybe do in these types of circumstances. But I don't need to do anything because it's already in committee and I will bring it up in committee, but I just want to throw it out there that those are 2 issues. And I can follow up also with the deputy mayor, public safety on them.
And so, Eric, just so that, I understand. You want the school to kick kids out of school, but then said they don't do it.
Well, you know, I'm not sure about it, but.
Or discipline them or have, not maybe kick out is that.
You know,
I just want to make sure I understand like what the goal would be.
I mean, I think it's to protect the other students at school. So if you have a student who we know is bringing a gun to school
But-
every day and was hiding in a bush, and now they've recovered the gun. And
Did they
know
bring the gun
who's,
on campus?
no, they were bringing it to school and then stashing it like at a neighbor's house that was right next to the school. Like, if a student is doing that and has been identified as the student doing that, I'm not saying we do like an expulsion or anything like that. I'm saying that we need some sort of mechanism to place that situation in a holding pattern. So that the very next day, the student's not getting another gun and then bringing it over there. There's gotta be a pause at some
So if he's
point.
bringing the gun to school, that is a violation. If he's not, like, that's what I'm saying, like, the school can do that. If you're saying he's bringing it to school. DCPS has rules and regulations to
Yeah.
handle that.
Well, I guess it's in a gray area because you're stashing it in the neighborhood and he hasn't been arrested yet, but everybody knows who he is and he's been identified. Yes.
I mean, I'm happy to, have a longer conversation with you offline. I'm not familiar with this behavior. I've dealt with this at schools. I mean, essentially, most times, if a kid is stashing something before they go into the school, it's because they actually don't want to bring it into the school. They're trying to avoid like the metal detectors and stuff. Now, I hear you on the it could be a threat. We don't know why the kid was doing what they're doing. I also hear Executive Director Butler is raising, which is like, we don't want to penalize kids for actions they are not taking in school. I think there are things that schools do, when they are in communication and these things are identified, to better understand why students are doing different things. And sometimes, it is a threat to other students and sometimes it's not. But I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you based on some of what I have experienced with some of my schools, and how they have handled this type of behavior. This is not, unfortunately, unfamiliar behavior.
Before I leave out, I'd also more than happy to talk to you about it, because we did actually have this incident happen at a kid's school where we lost a child. They were stashing a weapon off campus, so to speak, retrieved it, stabbed the child. We had, yeah. So more than happy to talk about what we worked on after that happened. Dr. Fleishman.
That's a really great question for Phil from the school safety office as well, since they do a lot of work, like interagency work and communication between, as we discussed, public charter schools, DCPS, Metro Police, like all the different agencies surrounding school safety. That's a great specific question for them. And if we have them on the panel, we could ask a broader question on that.
Exactly. And not to belabor this, but just to get to your point, it's like, I'm kind of putting two and two together on this. It's like the student may be bringing it for self-defense. But like, let's use the Jackson Reed situation where a student was gunned down and then other students were fleeing the scene. A student could also be bringing a gun every day. And then let's say that the neighbors get that gun, the police grab that gun, but they could bring a gun the next day, same person, and then shoot another student with it. I mean, we don't know exactly what happened at Jackson Reed yet, but that's the reason why I just feel like there's got to be something in place where, we prevent what happened at your school, we possibly prevent what happened at Jackson Reed from happening again. And we, like, if this is, I mean, it's serious, if a student bringing it weapon to school and stashing it nearby the school, like, I feel like there's got to be an intervention that's taking place. It can't be that, like, I was just off school, we're not gonna do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I said I'm happy to have a conversation with you is because there are, how to put it, you don't get credit for the bomb that doesn't go off.
Yeah.
And like I have a middle school in particular, that this has been an ongoing issue, and they've been working with the community around this, and they have not had any injuries or fatalities.
Okay.
And so it does not necessarily mean that has to be what happens. And so I'm happy to, like I said, have a conversation with you about some of what I have seen, because it's not always like with the things that don't make the news are when people are intervening, when people are supporting children, when people are, communicating and collaborating. But those things are not, and a lot of times they shouldn't be, because if we talk about to everybody how we do those things, then maybe in some cases, they may not be as effective. But I don't want you to feel the absence of a consequence that you can see in school is the absence of a response. And I want you to know what responses are appropriate and available.
Thank you. I'll take you up on that. And you as well.
All right. Thank you so much. Next is Bullying Task Force, Dr. Colson.
Yes, so as we've discussed multiple times, we are looking at the definition of bullying, and we know that since the definition was created, there's been a cyberbullying and what's happening now. So we want to move to reestablish the Bullying Task Force. bullying prevention task force. That's one thing. And then the second thing is, going off of the recommendations from the Student Advisory Committee, their 25-26 annual report. They recommended a safety and well-being resource, looking specifically at what resources are available to students. So we would like to take them up on that recommendation and do the work for our community.
And is this already in your committee here?
No, we do not already, bullying, we already have, safety and wellness, well-being, no, we don't, but it seems appropriate for our community.
So, I think all that needs to be done.
As-
Go right ahead, question.
So the bullying task force, is that one that the state board ran, is that one that the Office of Human Rights ran before? Or is there like a?
That you're reestablished.
Yeah, see, because it said reestablished, I just said, I'm not even personal, but like what it was before. Or who was involved before.
I believe it was us, was it us?
It wasn't us, but OHR took over the recommendations from that, but it was under, I believe, the mayor's office. And so the reestablishment, it's calling for the reestablishment of that, since it is over a decade since they did that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative. Thank you, man. Representative Lyles.
I actually worked with Mr. Shepherd on the Youth Human Rights Ambassador Program, and I recently did a video for bullying prevention, and I also did an anti-bullying mural at my school. So I would love to be on the bullying prevention task force.
And could I also add, when this was discussed at our last committee meeting, and there is interest from the deputy mayor's OHR's office, especially since the focus would be on cyberbullying. Since it, yeah.
Was there other comments? So what I'll say to this is that, since we're seeking to reestablish a bullying task force, whatever, assign it to your committee, to look at the groundwork of how we, go about where it's gonna lie and all the responsibility of the task force. So I will put it in C, since you guys haven't officially established. I believe you also have wellness. Same thing?
Yes.
Yes, same, global football. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
The last thing that we have is reopening the SAC. Hold on one second.
Not to belabor this, but just so the staff can take notes.
Okay.
On the last topic. If you refer to DC Act, 19-384, that's got the original language for establishing the bullying task force. So we could do, just like another legislative update, we could pass legislation to reestablish the task force. Not pass it, but we could introduce it collectively. But that's if you want to see what it is, that's it.
That's great.
Thank you.
Got it.
And the last thing that we have, which is this evening, is the reopening of the SAC application. Dr. Fleischer.
So right now we have about 16 high schools represented on the student advisory committee. Yeah. We have 34 high schools across the city that are not. There are, I don't know, about half and half, public charter schools and DC public schools. And so, a lot of them fall under wards 5, 7, and 8. And so I could certainly use your help, talking to principals as schools have reopened and students are selecting extracurriculars, really reinforcing how great the program is, that they get community service. We were at School Without Walls. I was talking to the principal and they're like, we can share it on our announcements, share flyers. And so your help would be greatly appreciated to get as many schools, maybe all the schools in the district, to be represented, at least one student. And we're not looking for honor roll students, we're looking for every student that could speak on behalf of their peers. I have more flyers if you want to pass those out during back to school events, visiting schools. I'm gonna try to visit a few in Ward 7, 8, and 5. A little this week and a little next week, especially the larger schools. And the last thing I'd like to say on that is I think if we capture students this year, it's likely, given the SAC from last year, they'll return. And so it would be a few less schools next year to try to capture, because they'll recruit their peers for the next school year. So thank you all in advance, and very excited for our September 14th first SAC meeting.
All right. Darren, when you say reopening, is it already reopened? I actually got an email, I think that was yesterday, from from a teacher at one of my schools, and was like, hey, is the SAC application open? They couldn't find it. Now, maybe they were looking for student reps and that's why they couldn't find
Or
it.
choice of word, it's always open, it's re-promoted and more
Okay.
targeted than anything.
Yeah.
And so, like, even after the first meeting, if students, like, I'll continue doing outreach to other schools, and like, if
But it's
students,
up on the website, like if they go,
it's on the
I can
website.
just email it back to them and say, yeah,
It's on the student advisory committee page and it's on the homepage.
okay.
And on our social media as
And,
well.
yeah.
So I'll send out an email to all the members with which schools are unrepresented right now.
Okay, that helps.
And a link to our social media
Okay.
with a link for
Okay,
them to sign up. So,
thank you.
thank you.
I know we have one student who gave his whole entire speech, so to speak, about recruitment. Thank you again, sir. We announced it in each one of the swearing ins and everything like that, but our student representatives have also been very, I know they represent their schools, but if you know other representatives, other students from other schools, friends and stuff like that, please direct them to it. You guys have been the best promotions for this. So we appreciate you guys' support on this as well, outside of your own schools. And I can say Dr. Blanchard, there's a young lady in my household who's very happy, looking forward to the 14th. Okay, so, thank you very much, sir. Is there anything else, for the good? As we said, we have a meeting, leadership tomorrow at 10 o'clock with, our council chairman. We have kind of stated a little bit of what we're going to be talking about. I just want to make you guys aware of that. We'll be talking with him tomorrow at 10.
Do you all have agenda items that you would like to? For either the Dr. Mitchell meeting next week, clearly graduation requirements, the list, are there other things? And for Chairman Mendelson tomorrow.
Can you, this is for Dr. Mitchell, I know special education is a part of their strategic priorities, and you all talk to her about ways we can like work together to be able to strengthen those priorities. Not sure if it's school visits, planning events, just different things of ways we can collaborate to really like uplift that for our special education community. I know they said they were really trying to hone in on that, and I think the board should be a support in that.
Noted. Others.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So I did promise some parents, but of course, a swearing in, that I would get their students home at a timely manner. So now I can give you the statement that you guys will be able for the first time, which gets us to adjournment. So thank you, members, for your time and engagement tonight. We will next convene at our public meeting on September 16th. Seeing no further business before the board, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
By Dr. Law. Second. It's been seconded by Colson. The motion has been properly moved. Seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. We are now adjourned at exactly 8:20.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Out there. Bye, out there.
Bye.
Bye, out